Bauman, Counselor Graney, Counselor Leahy, Counselor Sullivan are here. Counselor Anderson Burgos just texted me. He is under the weather. Not for some of the reasons that are on TV, but something that he ate, and he apologizes. He said he'd come on if there were votes, and I said, no, go rest based on what he was telling me. I just want him to stay home and just rest. So he apologizes for not being here. I know others will join us as we go on. So with that, the first item on the agenda was the fire department. As we said last time, we wanted to allow police, fire, and DPW to have their own nights because they take up a large majority of the time when we discuss it. So instead of having them all on one night where we keep them there till midnight, which is not fair, we kind of broke it up. So Chief, we'll turn it over to you. And we'd ask that, any information you want to provide to us on the budget or anything that you want to tell us, and then we'll go from there on going into your part of the budget, which is pages 19 and 20. And we'll go if counselors have questions or anything else, we'll go from there. And Counselor Vacan has joined us. And we'll
Hello.
Hey, Counselor. So, over to you, Chief.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me tonight. It's good to see everybody. I do want to make a short statement in regard to the budget this year. This FY21 budget is largely level funded on our end by the mayor. It did cut 2 firefighter positions, or he proposes to cut 2 firefighter positions, bringing our total to 80. I would prefer to be at 82, but 80 is the number that the mayor is proposing. Again, it's largely level funded on the expense side also, with one minor cut to the IT side, which was a $5,000 cut, which could be semi-problematic going down the road. I do have contractual obligations within that line for software licensing and things like that. So it's not off by much, but we'll have to watch it throughout the year. One thing I do want to speak about, and it was a mistake that I made, and I want to bring it to your attention in regard to when I was building the FY21 budget this year. I did make an Excel spreadsheet error, which I take total responsibility for. And if most of you know me, I'm accountable for my actions, and I wanted to bring it to your attention tonight. It's in the fire alarm operator line item. I did miss half of a salary in my Excel spreadsheet, which I extremely apologize for. I did notify the mayor and the auditor in regard to this mistake, and I take full ownership for it. The amount of money is $30,718. I do feel that I can manage this mistake throughout the year, either by not filling the position until January or February, finding money in my budget later on in the fiscal year, or if the mayor so chooses to put in a supplemental budget at some point, I would definitely petition to have that extra money added in. Again, I do apologize for this. It's my first go around with the budget, and I take full ownership for it, and I do apologize. With that, if you guys have any questions for me, I'm here to answer any questions to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. With that, we can open up to everyone. If you have questions, raise your hand on the side, yellow, blue button.
Mr. President.
Or Councilor Graney. Councilor Graney,
Yeah,
you.
Yeah, Chief Beskopowski, I just wondering, do you have any active grants that are outstanding that you expect money to come in grant form this year?
I actually, we have this 2018 SAFER grant that we're working under right now. We did receive $136,000 on May 15th. It was our first installment of reimbursement from FEMA in regard to that grant. All other grants, I think that's about it for right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone further for the chief? I'm not sure if Councilor Murphy, I see you, Councilor Sullivan. I'll put you next. So Councilor Murphy, Councilor Sullivan.
Okay, and am I being heard?
Yeah, I hear
Yep.
you.
Okay, just want to check. I always end up not being heard. Chief, a few things. First of all, thank you again for coming, and thank you for your integrity and your comments. That's appreciated, and you know, I think we can certainly try to work that out.
Thank you.
You know, I was always have been concerned about fire department issues since way back when I was a young man, and we talked about staffing. So I want to go over a few things, and I'd like you to really give me an idea as to what we do. How many shifts do we have? We have 4 shifts.
4 shifts,
Four
correct.
shifts. And they're all 24-hour shifts, or
All 24-hour shifts.
okay. And how many firefighters, not lieutenants or captains, how many firefighters on each shift?
Well, it fluctuates. Right now, we probably average between 23 and 25. It's not even across the board.
Okay, so
Oh, firefighters, you mean?
yeah, just firefighters.
Yeah,
not,
that was total
Okay.
staffing.
Okay.
3, 6, 9, 6, 9, 12, 15. It fluctuates, Counselor. Let me do some quick math here.
okay.
4. Yeah, 12 and 16, I would say, somewhere in there.
And so the others would be officers.
Officers, yeah. Yep.
All right, and we have 31 officers, so 6 shifts would mean 5 officers maximum.
Yep.
So again, that's where I end up having because I know we're having 20 people on the apparatus each shift, correct?
Correct. That's my minimum manning. We don't drop below 20.
Right. So a couple of things. So the Quint always has 4 people, right?
Correct.
And ladder on Northampton Street, 4 people.
It'll drop to 3.
And if it drops to 3, where does the other person come from? Because you have to have 4, at least 2 of the apparatus.
Right. Truck one downtown will have 4.
Okay. So that's the regulars. I know at one time they told me it was the other way, but okay. Okay. So, and I know overtime has always been an issue.
Correct. Yep.
And I know as of April, it was 310,000 in overtime. I'm sure it's well past that. So a couple of other questions. Is injured on duty, does that end up causing a lot of overtime?
It can. We've really harnessed in our injured on duties with some new policies and procedures. We're bringing people back in on light duty quicker through some contract negotiation language, which tends to get people back online a little faster than in the old process. We currently have 2 people out at IOD right now. Okay.
But obviously it varies.
It varies.
We're getting so many financial transfers, so obviously it varies from every 2 weeks we get a whole new list.
And one of the 2 has been extended. It's been a long time that he's been out.
Okay. And if we got, let's say we got 15 firefighters on each apparatus, that would give me 60 total.
Yep.
So the other 20, what are they doing? The other 20 firefighters.
I don't understand your question.
Well, we got 4 shifts.
Yep.
And we got 15 or 16 firefighters per shift.
Mm-hmm.
Or on that team.
Yep.
So, or are you saying there's 16 firefighters that day?
That day.
Okay, so all firefighters are assigned to an apparatus?
There's 1 firefighter assigned to fire prevention. He's an inspector.
Okay.
Yep. And then there's some officers in there also. And there's an officer in training.
Okay.
And there's an officer in the motor pool.
Okay. And I'm going to just ask you one more logistical question in terms of when you get to a fire.
Mm-hmm.
So could you just go through, and I know there has to be some difference, and I know this has been a debate for a long time, but I just would like an explanation. When, let's say, the ladder truck on Northampton Street goes to a fire with 3 people, how they react versus a ladder truck going from downtown with 4 people, and how those particular positions are functioned.
Right. It's a great question. Obviously, our effectiveness and our efficiency is a lot higher with 4 people as opposed to 3. And that's critical, and it's a great question. And we strive to keep 4 people on a piece. Obviously, being a community like we are and having the financial situations that we have, it's not always possible to do that. So we do the best we can with the staffing levels that we have. It's a great question, and efficiency and effectiveness does get compromised when you just with one person. It really impacts what we do.
So would it impact in terms of rescue, in terms of immediate firefighting? Where would the impact be?
Yeah, so on a ladder truck per se, a ladder truck is their main focus when they arrive at a fire is to go right to rescue mode. That is their main focus. The engine companies, the engines that carry the water and the hoses are there to fight the fire. They're the ones that are doing an interior attack on the base of the fire. These ladder trucks are ladder truck people and the apparatus themselves are designed for rescue. They're going to windows. They're doing primary searches inside buildings. That's what their main focus is.
So if we were able to have 4 on each of the ladders, the potential for a quicker rescue would be greater.
That's correct.
Okay. And then just in terms of the actual fighting the fire, with it went, because now if I'm correct, every pumper, and I know that's not what you call them, engine truck, right?
Engines. Yep.
Okay. But it has pumps.
Yep.
That every one of those has 3 people. So when they get there, not having the 4th, what would the 4th person do if they had 4 people?
So your positions, you have a driver.
Yeah.
You have the officer who's in charge of the company. And then the 2 jump seats in the back, one is a hotline man who goes in with the officer, and the other one is the hydrant man. So the 4th man, if tasked, would be dropped off at a hydrant to create or get a water source for the engine. With only having 3, that compromises us getting water quickly. So now the 2nd due engine or the 3rd due engine is tasked with feeding that 1st due pump water.
Okay. So the quickness of access to water is somewhat compromised.
It could be. We're pretty good at what we do. We've been dealing with this for a long time.
No, I understand.
In dealing with 3 people on a truck, we've become very good at it.
Yeah, no, I understand it. But you are also challenging your firefighters are being challenged to be maximum efficiency with less people power.
It's a great point.
Okay. And then my last question would be, so I'm going to assume, and I know when you first went into the 20 and I was not on council, I had asked your predecessor to give me a listing, and I also got some staffing levels. And I know there were a lot of times where, certainly during the summer, that there were people being brought in because people were on vacation, people were on personal time, I assume some were on sick time. And you just lost 2 from the budget, 2 firefighters from the budget. So I'm assuming, so that's 1/3 of your shifts just lost a firefighter. So, I mean, is there a number that we can, I know originally, if I'm not mistaken, it was 88?
Yep. That's when the 2 was open. Yep.
Okay. So if we, let's say we had 88.
Yep.
Just to be kind to you. If we had that.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Keith, anytime. If we had that, and let's say a firefighter is in the $50,000 range, that would be 400,000. Yep. All right. So, but would that then be putting you in a position where you could at least significantly reduce overtime?
Absolutely. If I had 88 firefighters, overtime would be drastically reduced.
And also the effectiveness of every apparatus going to a fire would be enhanced.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. For right now, I'll stop. And I also want to thank you for your comments the other day about the fireworks. And I saw there was a big fire in Worcester caused by fireworks, I think, last week.
Yep.
Stay safe, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Sullivan was next.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Counselor. How are you?
Good, good. We could go to under personal services to line item 51302, the hazmat overtime.
Hazmat 5. What was the line item?
51302.
Okay.
Okay, so I know you we're trying to level fund and stuff. That's good, but in 2019 we only expended 4,000, and through last week we'd only spent $3,800 this year.
Correct.
Do you think we could go with a 4,000 on that?
I will say this, Counselor, that this is a reimbursable account by the state. So whatever overtime we do spend, I think the money comes back to the general fund. So you are reimbursed on that at the state level. So I'd hate to cut it, and then the hazmat overtime is difficult to judge because obviously you never know when these calls are going to come in. These are state-run programs, and
I totally understand that, but in the last 2 years we've only spent 4,000 each year.
right. I mean, I would advocate to keep it at 8, but if you needed to cut there, I mean, I may have to come back and get more money. That's the only problem.
Well, I think it's always good to come back and get reimbursable money anyways.
Yeah, right.
I forget what the number is, but I think we've got close to $1 million that this budget's out of balance by. So
No.
every bit can help. All right, that was my only one on personal. So I got a few under the expenses. Repair and maintenance on the motor vehicles with all the new vehicles we put in service and what have you. We would be going with a lower number there in anticipation of next year, all the new vehicles we have and stuff. That would be somewhat lower than last year. We'd only spent 45 through last week there also.
Yeah, we're going to be pretty close to on that number though, Counselor. I'm looking at the numbers now. Motor vehicle repair and maintenance. We're probably going to be at that 50 mark by the end of the fiscal year. And then even on the supply side, the vehicle supplies is probably going to be pretty close also. It's expensive to keep these trucks running, and we have a great mechanic, an EVT mechanic that is fabulous. And he turns these vehicles around very quickly, and he can fabricate, he can do it all. But parts and everything else that go along with them are very expensive to maintain.
Yeah, I get that. It's just we got so many new vehicles that one would think that number would go down. That was
yeah, they still break down, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. 53190, the education and training.
Yep.
So far this year, we'd only spent $7,700. In the previous year, 11,000.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that there's more money going into that fund. That has a lot to do with EMT recertification, which is contractual, which needs to get reimbursed to the firefighters as they re-up their EMT certification. And it's usually split. The department's usually split in half by which year you're certifying on. So it's
Well, I get that, but even split in half, we'd only spent $7,800 with 2 weeks left in the year.
yeah. 5130. I mean, I wouldn't advocate to cut it, Counselor, but these recertifications are they're $150 to $160 per person every 2 years. I mean, it's your prerogative, but no, I would advocate to keep it where it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we could keep it where it is, but we're just not spending that every year.
And you'll get that back at the end of the year if we don't spend it.
Well, I know we get it back at the end of the year, but like I've said, you know, I'm going to keep.
I understand your argument. I understand.
Yep. The next line item, also the fire academy costs. So the mayor's cut the number of firefighters by 2. The previous year, we'd only spent $1,300. We haven't spent anything year to date. Is that, did we get grants for that this year also?
No grants, Counselor, but the academy was postponed due to COVID. I have 9 firefighters that need to go to the academy. 3 of them just started a week and a half ago, and it's going to be a staggered start. So all 9 of them will be in the academy the next couple of months. So that money will be spent.
And what's the cost per person on that?
Well, it pays for their meals per day. It's 10, 15, 25 a day. If you times that by the 9, that's going to be your 15,000 right there.
Okay.
And it's, you know, if everything stayed according to plan and COVID didn't happen, these guys would be back already or getting ready to come back. But with everything being delayed, you know, it's really, it's semi-problematic for us.
All right. And the next one, the medical, 53210.
Yep.
Kind of the same thing there. We'd only spent $400 in 2019. So far through June 5th of this year, we'd only spent $4,100. There's still $6,000 left in that account.
Yep. It has to do with pre-employment physicals and drug testing and everything that goes along with it. So it really depends on your hiring, and if you have new employees in the budget, they need to be drug tested, and you know their physicals need to come out of that account.
All right. Well, if we've got 9 going to the academy now, and we've already spent 4,000, wouldn't that kind of account for that? Wouldn't it be a much smaller number going forward?
Possibly. It possibly could be a lower number. Correct. But I have retirements coming up. I have 2 vacancies, so I may have to hire. So that money needs to still be there in the event that we do hire new firefighters.
Yep. No, I got that. It just seems, you know, for a placeholder for that 5,000 would be a good number. We haven't spent more than that in the last 3 years.
It all depends on how many we have to hire. It's hard to judge.
Yep.
You know, you guys are well aware that, you know, not all the time do we get letters of intent, you know, a year in advance like we would like to. And sometimes it's 2 weeks in advance, and you know we have to hire. It's hard to gauge sometimes. That's all I'm getting at.
Okay, that's it for me for right now. Todd, I just want to make you aware I have to leave at 10 of 7, so I'll be checking out then.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Murphy, your hand is still up, or?
I am, but I'll defer to Counselor Tallman right now, and then I'll come back.
All right, Counselor Tallman.
All right, good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Counselor. How are you?
Good, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay.
Good, I got a question on the front page, 51500 and 51510, the buybacks.
Yep.
Could you explain those? I know with Chief Pond, we had half of it going in. Could you explain those 2 line items?
Right, so the vacation day buyback is a contractual benefit that pays firefighters up to 10 days buyback of their vacation time, which is it really helps us with overtime, getting rid of that vacation time. And it goes for retirement. We pay half of the retirement out of there too. Okay. This one is budgeted for 3 people to retire. And then the sick leave buyback has half of John Pond's sick leave buyback in it for this fiscal year, which we budgeted, which I'm grateful for. And the 3 retirements.
Okay, so part of that is half of his
correct
retirement. Okay.
Yep, on the sick leave side.
On the sick leave, right. And you just stated earlier, you got a few, I mean, you're scheduling for 3 retirements in the next fiscal year, but you could get 6.
We could get 6, yes.
No, I mean, there's people that are be eligible for retirement, right? More than the
Correct.
3.
Yep.
But right now, that's the set number you have.
Those are the ones we know about.
You
Yep.
know about, okay. And the other question I had, talking about the grant, the SAFER grant, you said you got some money if it don't a certain number of employees on.
We do. And we're right on the number. We're right on the number right now, Counselor.
Okay,
The
so
number
it has to be right at that. And is that for another 2 years, is it?
Correct. 115 is the number, and we're on 115 right now.
Okay, and it has to stay there or you lose the grant.
We lose if we go below, we have to hire.
You have to hire.
Yep.
And then to keep that grant going.
Correct.
Okay. And how many more years do you have to that grant?
There's 2 more.
2 more years. Okay.
Yep.
And the other question you mentioned earlier, one of the things I always like to talk about is the overtime and the injured on duty. And I know you've had a couple, but it seems every 2 weeks we vote on a couple, but it's been pretty steady at maybe two to 3 people. Is the other person, you mentioned one person has been out for extended period of time. Now they have to wait to make a determination for the physical to decide if you're going to keep them on the books or not? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I work closely with Metatrol,
Right.
which is the city's third-party provider, and because of HIPAA violations, I can't really talk a lot about it. But
Right.
we're in direct contact with them, and things are going to be moving in a direction very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other injury is nothing major. You said you utilize people for indoor. So does that keep a person back on the truck if you get that one person back inside light duty?
Well, no, there's no one to move out to
Okay.
take their spot. So yeah, they usually go into fire prevention to do some kind of administrative work. A lot of times they're still injured when they come back. They're either rehabbing an injury or doing whatever. They haven't really fully been cleared by their doctor to go back to full duty as a firefighter. So we put them to work in the office doing administrative work and getting some odd jobs done that we normally can't get to.
Okay. And the other question I have was on you mentioned about the vehicle, the motor vehicles repair and expense.
Yep.
And I know we have, some newer vehicles, and I know, fire trucks break too, even the newer ones. You said you have a good mechanic on right now?
We do. We have a John Kuziak is his name. He was hired last year. He's an EVT mechanic, phenomenal mechanic. I can't speak highly enough for this individual. He has really taken our fleet, and you guys are going to get a lot of years out of this fleet, which is a good thing. We were not getting the years of service out of this fleet in years past because of the way things were being maintained. Right. John is on this like you wouldn't believe. He turns around vehicles and gets them back in service so quickly, which is great for us. I'm sure you all remember a few years back before we purchased the KME's engines. We were beg, borrowing, and stealing from other communities to try to get fire trucks to come in and that we could borrow until something was fixed. That's not happening anymore. John is on this. He's well trained. Matter of fact, I want to send him for more training and get him more certifications in, pump repair and hydraulics and things like that are specific to these new fire trucks.
Now, Chief, where does he work out of? Does he work at a certain station or does he move around?
He works out of headquarters.
Okay.
Yep. He works out of the alarm room bay on the end there. And he takes the trucks in there. He also, we gave him one of the old TAC vehicles. So he goes around all the stations in that, and he can do mobile repairs inside the stations if he needs to. But most of his equipment and tools are down at headquarters.
Okay, super. I just want to thank you and your staff. And I know you're only good as the people below you. I want to thank the men and women of the fire department for the work they do day in and day out, especially during these trying times, because it's not easy going out and taking the job that they have to do under the COVID-19 situation. So just relay that to your people that they're doing a fantastic job.
I will, Counselor. And I have the best team in the world. I work with the best firefighters in the world, as far as I'm concerned, and I will pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Counselor Murphy, you had a follow-up?
Yep. Two things, Chief. Again, getting into so you're having 9 firefighters going to the academy, correct?
Correct.
So I'm going to make an assumption, you correct me if I'm wrong, that if those 9 firefighters are all going to the academy at the same time, you're going to be in a situation where you are pretty much having to use overtime.
Correct. Right. Yep. And from now, we this kind of worked out a little better for us this time, because the academy is now more of a virtual start to the academy, where in the past, all 9 firefighters would have went to the academy at the same time and were there for 10 weeks. What we're doing now is we're staggering the start. So we have 3 firefighters that started a week ago. They're doing virtual lecture at fire headquarters for 3 weeks. And then they're going to go to Springfield and start doing their hands-on. There'll be a week off, and then 3 more firefighters will start their 10-week process at headquarters, starting their lecture. And then they'll follow the same procedure for the next 3. So it kind of staggers it out and pushes it out a little bit. So as the first 3 start, we still have 6 firefighters back, 6 provisional firefighters back working on the line, which is helping us with overtime right now.
Okay. And when you have someone retire, and let's say you had 3 or 4 people retiring, again, that puts you in a situation, depending on where they are, that because we don't replace people in anticipation, that again, we're spending overtime money.
Yeah. I mean, the process is long, Counselor, to get somebody hired. And sometimes it's not beneficial to hire 1 at a time. We kind of wait for 3 to 5 to put a class through for academy purposes and for logistics back at the station. I wish I could hire 1 at a time and have it done within a couple of days. That would be ideal, but the system just doesn't work that way.
Okay. And the last question relates to I know you're doing repairs in the buildings. I know we're talking, I think engine 3, we've got the roof. Is that now being worked on, or is that done, or?
Oh, Station 3, you mean?
Yeah, Station 3.
Yeah, it hasn't been done yet, but I will tell you this, Counselor, that I actually drove down to the contractor's office a week ago and put him on the spot for a date to get going. He's waiting on his asbestos removal company to strip the roof. So once those people come back to work, which is a whole other problem because a lot of people aren't back to work yet, we are on the schedule and we will get going on this. I want this done yesterday. Not, I don't want to push it out any longer.
Okay. I know that'll make it more attractive for the people, a better working environment. But
Correct.
My other question, and related to item 52100, the energy, gas, and oil and electric.
Yeah.
With the work that's being done in terms of the houses, would we not be in a position where some of this is going to save us, conserve us energy?
It may. The roof may stop the heat from going up through the through the roof. I would hope that it would.
Yeah.
These lines, the energy, gas and electric, and water and sewer, they're problematic. I mean, we're underfunded year after year for energy, and we're constantly moving money into that line to pay for it at the end. And it is what it is. We have to pay it. It's there, so we make it work. I do believe that the more efficient we make these buildings, the more money we will save over the long run.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thanks, God.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Chief, thank you, and welcome to your first official budget hearing. Certainly
Thank
no
you.
stranger to the saddle here, but I want to compliment you on answering some very good budget questions very quickly, honestly, and transparently. And it appears you have a great handle on your budget. Is it fair to say, you said you're level funded, but out of your request, the mayor cut you $250,000, including 2 firefighters. Your budget includes the other half of Chief Bond's buyback, which he generously helped out the city last year by deferring that to this year. If you just take those, 3 numbers together with the fire's contract, your budget is under level funded. And
It is
and level funding is not level service. So I can't see cutting a dime from this budget and expecting you to provide the service that the fire department has provided this year. I mean, it's just incredible what under normal circumstances, but in the middle of a pandemic, to be able to do what you do. And I have nothing but compliments for you and for the entire fire department. And I wish we could add to the budget, because I think some of the answers to Councilor Murphy's questions show that there is some deficiencies within the budget itself. And I think every penny would be well spent. How much money are you returning this year? Rough idea?
It's up in the air, Counselor. It's going to be under 100,000.
That's fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, just remember, we're closer to that 300,000 mark than probably anybody else in the city. We stay very close to that mark. We don't go the years of $600,000, $800,000 overtime budgets we haven't had those in years. And we try to stay as close to 300 as we can. And it is really dependent on, just like Councilor Murphy said earlier, it's dependent on staffing. Staffing directly affects our overtime, whether that's through normal hires, injured on duty, anything like that will affect overtime. So keeping our staffing levels up. Oh, excuse me?
Replacing vacation time.
Replacing vacation time. These are all contractual benefits that the guys are entitled to. Yeah, we do need to replace them at times.
Chief, did the mayor give you a Chief, did the mayor give you? Mr. President, I'm getting interference from somewhere.
Yeah. Ryan, can you mute everyone to maybe block that out?
Thank you. Chief, did the mayor give you a reason why he reduced the firefighters from 82 to 80?
He did not.
I don't know if it was because their contract, I forget the percentage this year, but it does go up a little bit this year. More of a cost of living increase, but he gave me no reason why
he did not.
By 2. And if we could talk about the SAFER grant, I know Councilor Graney and I think Councilor Sullivan or Murphy mentioned it, but the SAFER grant is wonderful. And over the years, the fire department has used it very wisely. Have you had a recent conversation since you took over with the auditor about how to balance the SAFER grant at the end of the fiscal year?
I have had numerous conversations with the auditor. We have a great working relationship. We speak very often. We talk about this all the time, and I'm in constant communication with her, especially with this 2018 SAFER grant, because we just brought in our first payment from the federal government. So I'm in constant contact with Sandy in the treasurer's office, and I'm in constant contact with the auditor's office, making sure that these ETFs, when they come in, are placed in the proper accounts. That is the most important thing. Our documentation on our end is meticulous. We can account for every dime that comes in from the federal government. Where it goes sometimes, once it's brought into the city, that's where we need to have a little bit more oversight and walk these things through. And that's what I plan on doing, Councilors, walking it through the process.
Thank you. And I think you know where I'm coming from. That is very important. It's something that over the last 3 or 4, probably 5 years, been brought to our attention, that there's been a lot of, not just the fire department, but there's been deficiencies in police, fire, schools in this area. And this year, but the free cash from last fiscal year was taken away from us. The SAFER grant of 2017, which I'm assuming is the 2016, because those are 2-year grants, if I remember correctly, $224,386 was minus from our free cash this year before we even saw it. There also was something taken from the fire department, assistance to firefighter. It was $8,018, but I think you get the gist of the message. Is we need to be, between the treasurer, the auditor, and our outside auditor, if necessary, we need to be on top of these grants, because we don't need to live by free cash, but we can't be throwing free cash back at things like this that are easy, that should be resolved prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year. So your answer is great. I think you got it in hand. If you and the auditor are talking, I'm sure it's going to be a zero balance this year at the end, correct?
We'll try our best, Counselor. Just remember, the SAFER grants are multiple-year grants, so we do our best.
Well, we mentioned that to the DOR, to DLS, Division of Local Services. they didn't respond to that, and they didn't go to it. It was Councilor Bartley's order, and it was questions that we asked. They gave us some wonderful information, and our outside auditor gave us some wonderful information. But when we asked, how are these multi-year grants that carry over, how can they be deficient at the end of 1 year when, everything, is still ongoing? And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders. So I'm with you on that one, but we got it there. We can't win that battle. It's like fighting City Hall. You don't win. We're fighting the state. We don't win. We got to, somehow go with it and get it to where they believe it's where it should be.
I will promise you, Counselor, that I'm going to walk each ETF through the process, through this whole grant process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, Councilor Leahy, you're up next.
Yeah. Hi, Chief. How are you tonight, sir?
Good, Counselor. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And my first question has to be, was after our last Zoom call, what did Kelly say when you told her that you're you're giving back about $5,000 of your salary?
Yeah, she wasn't happy about that. I told her, no, we can't go to the Delaney house this weekend. We're gonna have to go to Burger King instead.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. No, she was fine with it. It's all good.
No, it's the right thing. You did the right thing. First of all, as Joe said, you know this budget inside and out. I mean, you've pretty much been kind of doing the same position with Chief Pond for many years now. So I applaud you for that. My concern is going back to the 80. How many firefighters do we have working now?
78.
Okay, 78. And so you wanted to hire additional 3 to get it to 82?
I would love to have 82 firefighters budgeted, but the mayor cut 2 positions. So I'm down to, as the budget sits now, I'll have 80 positions budgeted for next year.
Okay, so what's the union saying about that? Isn't that a union negotiation, or is...
I don't think they can negotiate staffing levels. I don't.
Okay. Okay. So just kind of revisit what you said to Terry before. So one of the positions is going to be a reduction of a person on a truck, right?
It could be anywhere. We're using a truck as an example, but yeah, a reduction of a firefighter in any capacity is going to, it's a big deal to your efficiency and how things operate at a fire.
Could we average the cost of or could we ballpark figure how much overtime would be spent if one person is out? So say if that truck had 3 people, because you can't run a truck with less than 3 people, correct?
Correct.
So say if a person's on vacation, or not even on vacation, say if a person calls out sick or gets injured, and now you have 2 people, how are you going to fill that 3rd position?
We hire overtime.
Now, in some cases,
we have extra on shift. Our minimum manning is 20. We don't drop below 20 firefighters, a complement of 20 people on a shift. So some of the groups have between 23 and 25 people on them. So a number of people can take vacation time and not create overtime. But once we drop below, we get into the summer season, a lot of people are going to be off. They have planned vacations, and that's when the overtime really starts to hit. Then if you couple that with people that are out injured, that's when it really starts to multiply. Now, our injured on duty is minimal. We only have 2 people out, and our staffing levels have been high. Now, we are going to start to lose people to the fire academy. So there's going to be a little, are you hearing that background? I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's a little choppy.
Are you hearing me okay?
I can hear you. We can hear you, Chief.
Okay. Yeah, so losing people to the academy is going to hurt us in the beginning of the year, but hopefully by that 10-week period is over and we get everybody back, the staffing levels will solidify and that overtime will level off. We're almost through the summer, believe it or not. I can't believe already, but we're heading towards July, and usually this is our peak period. So I think we're sitting pretty good. If we can keep our staffing levels up, if we can keep it, obviously I want 82 firefighters. I'm not going to get it this year. So I'm going to have to live with hopefully 80 we can make this work. I just need to keep everybody healthy and people coming to work.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, I agree with the other counselors. This is an extremely tight budget for you. You guys are, all the firefighters are doing just an amazing job. You guys are doing a great job. So I applaud you and I applaud all your firefighters. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Are there any other questions for the chief tonight with regards to the budget or any general questions? I know Councilor Lisi joined us, Councilor Bartley joined us, Councilor Sullivan had to jump off for another engagement. With that, seeing no other hands or anyone waving at me, Chief, thank you very much for everything. If there's any updates or questions, you know, you can email us or call us, and the budget will be taken up on June 29th with the 30th as a safety date, just in case we have to carry over. So that's when we'll be picking up the budget.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate everything.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Chief.
Thank you. Yep.
Next up is the Office of Planning and Development. Go to that page. That, I believe, is page 15. With that, Marcos is here. If you want to give us an overview or an update, and then we'll get into the budget itself. Good evening. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. A few overall points on the budget. There are a few changes, a couple of line items that are marginally reduced. Most increases are due to
Marcos, can you talk a little louder?
Closer to the screener.
Yeah, let me get closer. Now that you want to see more of my face.
You're a handsome man. Thank you. I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. Most of the increases are due to Professional Supervisors Association increases. This year, there's a 2% increase across the board. That reflects that. There is one promotion that I am seeking for someone who's in the Plan 1 seat, who had started fresh out of college, but has significant experience, and we're looking to promote them to Planner 2, and define their role to take on more things. In particular, trying to start carving out kind of a permanent ombudsman role, which has been discussed often publicly with constituents, as in people asking for a role like this, and also I know it's been a subject of city council discussion. So we're trying to bolster our ability to start lining up improvements to the permitting process, or ramping up, if you will. There was some movements on technology, parcel mapping. That line item slightly increases. Half of that is really just moving around money that was being paid out of dues and subscriptions for our city property viewer. Actually, the GIS that ties into the property viewer. There are census costs this year. This is a census year, and the planning office is on that. As you know, every 10 years is the U.S. Census, and that fixes our population numbers. That affects the city for the next decade in many ways. Most federal grants any federal grant that is proportional to your population will depend on this. But there are several other grants that would be tied to population and such. So it's really important to make sure that we are properly counted. We are traditionally what's called a hard to count community. So basically what that means is we have to invest more in making sure that people respond to the U.S. Census. So there are a couple of costs there in contracted services and what I anticipated in temporary seasonal. I'll tell you right now that due to COVID, I will volunteer up front. You can probably, I don't think I'll be using the $5,000 line item on temporary seasonal. We're not in a situation where I'm going to be putting going to be recruiting temporary staff directly for that. We may still pursue the contractual relationships. Well, I'm pretty sure we will, to bolster up our ability to get accounts, but that I anticipate using the temporary seasonal line item 51240. You're free to have at it. I don't think we'll need that. You'll also see the a slight increase in contracted services line item. Usually that's the line that I use to leverage and line up work that allows us to be competitive for grants. You often see my department before you, myself, with grants. We do small things to try to get aligned for things that are useful, whether it's a survey or just understanding a site. And then we've put in a slight increase for advertising, having conversations with the chair of the ordinance committee, understanding that there is additional ordinance things that need to be looked at, just making sure that I'm being proactive and budgeting there for some advertising. That's really most of the changes, cuts here and there, but all in all, just allowing us to continue to do what we're doing.
All right, well, thank you very much. With that, open it up to the counselors. If anyone has questions with regards to this department and the budget. I see Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for coming to the meeting, Marcos. My question is around the volume in the department and what you're anticipating in terms of the number of permits compared to what you dealt with in 2019 and what you're anticipating to have in 2020, and any other activity that would speak to growth in the city. Because what we've been hearing is all the growth is really coming from values of current properties. So I'm interested in trying to understand what the volume of work is within the department relative to the economic development piece.
It's hard to say that it's going to decrease or increase one way or another. We're not seeing our volume of work decreasing at all. We haven't seen projects been pulled off of the shelf yet. We're seeing more projects come in, particularly with the cannabis space, which honestly, that was the first thing I thought was going to be kind of the canary in the coal mine, because a lot of these are funded through cash holdings, right? You can't finance these the traditional way.
Right.
And when the market, my assumption was this will really tell us how much in a bad position we are. Everyone's going to pull out. We're not going to see these. And it's been the opposite. We've been flooded over the past 2 months, or maybe it just feels that way because it's just harder to work remotely. But we see a ongoing of people looking to get in here, continuing to do their permitting process, and get into Holyoke. So far, so good. I don't want to say anything that'll jinx it. And then we'll see, the economy presumably is opening in phases. Massachusetts, as far as the latest data, seems to be doing a pretty good job of reopening and seeing its caseload actually decrease while testing availability is increasing, which is good. That's not necessarily what's happening in other states. Presumably, even with the smaller permits, it is very possible that we'll continue to see the same amount of caseload if we can continue reopening in a safe way.
Which does seem optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions for this department? Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, Marcos, thank you. So senior project manager, is that a part-time position?
It is a full-time position. It is mostly paid out of from a grant. So that's why you see, I'm looking here at another screen, trying to find the line item.
So how much is the grant, do you know?
$40,000. It is a mass in motion grant from the Department of Public Health. And so that pays $40,000 of the position. So the city only pays for the balance.
Okay. So that is a full-time position.
It is, yes.
Was it always grant funded?
It's been grant funded for a long time. The city has had the Mass in Motion grant for a long time. That used to be under the Department of Public Health. In conversation with the Board of Health and the Department of Public Health at the state, there was an interest in moving it out of the Board of Health. So we absorbed it several years ago. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years, and we tweaked the work stream in a way that was aligned with our work, right? Because we aren't going to be doing strictly, health stuff. And so that it advanced our mission, but it also met the goals of the Department.
Okay, and then
So my understanding is the city's had Mass in Motion for like 10 years or something.
okay. And then two questions on line item 53010, the contracted services. So what were those contracted services for? I know it 2 year or FY19 it was almost 40,000. Obviously it's gone down. So what do we get for that?
So part of the problem is it wasn't budgeted at 40,000. It means that that 40,000 expended, and
Yep.
part of the awkwardness of I've been dragging. I've said this story before. I've been dragging a purchase order, and I should say dragging. That sounds like I've been dragging, like not doing something. Once a purchase order is open on a line item, it continues to carry the expenses on that line item, even if it wasn't budgeted. I believe it was 2009 or 2010. My predecessor got funding somewhere above $100,000 on that line item for one specific project, which is actually under construction now, the Front Heritage and White Street project. So that was the design money for the consulting firm was HDR. So anytime we make an expense out of that purchase order, it looks like it came out of that line item. It shouldn't be reflected anymore in fiscal 21. But that's probably why it's that high, because I think the only amount that was budgeted was like $15,000 or $16,000 last year. Okay. Usually what we do with that amount of money is I need to be able to respond to opportunities and line up for grant proposals, whether it's community development block grant money, whether it's general grants or what have you.
So these are people that put things together for you that you're looking to do that your staff right now does. You need to get someone to get it done.
We write our own grants. I mean, like documents that we need to create in anticipation of things, right? So maybe it could be a survey, like a land survey. It may be some environmental testing. It may be some contingency they really didn't think of in a project, mostly funded by grants. Really, most of the stuff that we do is by grants. But if it's not in the budget and I can't get the grant increase, then I can play with something else instead of waiting for 3 months while the clock is on the grant. So it allows us to do that. It's money that we leverage to complement the rest. The reason why it's increasing is two things. One I talked about was the census. I anticipate having to make some sort of expenditure from that. The second is we're humming now with our project managers. I no longer have rookie project managers. That allows them to do more, and so we can align more work. So slight uptick on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President?
Councilor Graney.
Yes. Good evening, Marcos. Could you give me a brief rundown on items 51104 and 51107, 2 head clerks at $40K apiece and 1 head administrative clerk at $43K. Could you explain those positions and their functions?
Yes. So our head administrative clerk, which is 51107, she's essentially like the office manager She mostly staffs the planning board, which has the most administrative overhead, I would call it, the more complex board, in terms of everything from advertising to minutes, because planning board deals with very complex permits and zone changes. But she also helps to administer the office, keeping most of the key paperwork and financials aligned. The other two clerk positions assist in one of them with economic development board. So as you know, we staff a number of boards. One of them does the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority, HEDIC, and the Holyoke Historical Commission. Also does the Board of Appeals, which we staff. So less of a time commitment, but there is some work involved in that. The third clerk we inherited just a couple of years ago, similar to the mass in motion position. It was something that was moved out of the Board of Health to try to align licensing with economic development. So we took the licensing clerk that was with the Board of Health, and that position is here now. That position is also aiding the Conservation Commission, or will be aiding the Conservation Commission in the months ahead. And license, I would also say the license commission, the license board is the one that requires the most. It's the most retail of services that we have in our offices. Constant communication with the public at large for everything from orientation to just the volume of actual licensees, people seeking the permits.
Thank you.
Councilor Tallman.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Marcos. Yeah, question on, you said the planning, planner one, you said you took that person out and made a promotion to make planning two because of what you said, education?
The person is being moved from, so you're seeing one line item going zero and
right,
going from zero to another number. So the actual person is being promoted from planner one to planner two. They started, I think, 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, and they're being promoted to planner two. Correct. When they were hired, they were fresh out of their master's program. They have since, more than proven their worth. Some of you know him, Curtis Weeman. He's one of the few who actually stayed in City Hall during the COVID crisis. He's almost like to borrow a phrase from, I think it was Dave Bartley, the Swiss Army knife of the office. And what we're trying to carve out is a more specific intent towards reforming the permitting process, working with other departments, which he's been doing already because he's our greatest specialist in terms of technology. And so when working with the Problem Properties Group, he's worked very closely with the fire department, building department, Board of Health. And so he occupies a really good position, not just from like his education and that much, but like in terms of office culture, to really be able to work with everyone and try to see what additional low-hanging fruit we can tackle and what other more complex projects we can start aligning, so to continue improving on the user experience and the public and making permitting easier.
Okay, thank you. And on the licensed commissioners too, now that is that a part-time, that's a salary position, then they get a stipend? Is that what that is for?
Licensed commissioners at $2,800. That is a stipend to the commissioners. It's set by ordinance.
And you have 3?
There are 3, yes. I think it's so I think 2 of them get $900 and the chair gets $1,000.
In the last fiscal year, was that money used up? In my book, it says 1,400. I don't know if there was more spent out of that.
It's possible there was a vacancy for a period of time.
Okay. So are we fully staffed now, or are we just?
And they didn't mind. That's not a check that I signed, right? Like that's through personnel. So I wouldn't know why it didn't go out. I think we had a vacancy for a period of time.
For a period of time? Okay, I just wondered on that one. Okay, so in essence, that planner one, is that something that you will just take out of the book or not have anymore? You just keep a planner two, or that still stay in the budget book?
I mean, whether it's in the budget book or not, it would be
Does-
zero. My proposal is having it zero funded, right? So that because we're not adding another body.
So you don't plan on adding another body later on in this year?
No.
No.
I mean, it appears there on the book so that you
Right.
can have a comparison, because otherwise then you would only have planner two and say, well, there was nothing there before. Well, there was, but on another line item.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for Marcos in this department? Joe, Councilor McGarren, I can see you're speaking.
Sorry, I was a little late with the blue hand. Marcos, I just want to recap a couple of things, because it seems like your department gets everything dumped on them. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but you get a lot of extracurricular activity that you oversee. HEDIC is not extracurricular redevelopment. That's part of economic development. I understand that you work with them. Does HEDIC and redevelopment, have extra money that goes in to pay for part of your budget? I know HEDIC has in the past.
Yeah, the redevelopment authority has a small amount of money, which was actually most of it came. When I say small, it's somewhere around $100,000. Most of that came from a grant from HEDIC, actually. So it was one public corporation passing the other. And the importance of that was so that the HRA had a bank account that they could initiate real estate transactions. If you don't have any money, that you can't even enter into a friendly acquisition, as you know, as a member of HEDIC yourself. So that's allowed to do certain property transactions to enact actions spelled out in the local and state approved urban renewal plan. HEDIC has some additional money, and I should say, in terms of HRA expenditures, we don't have an annual budget because we don't tend to actually have recurring expenses from HRA. Whenever we make expenses from the redevelopment authority account is for something very specific, and we just go for the board for that. So it's appraising a parcel, for example, that we want to acquire, or once we paid for some external legal services, right? So it's case by case. The HEDIC has a larger liquidity, closer to $2 million in assets. We're looking to deploy that as part of the HEDIC's mission into business assistance money. As you know, but for the benefit of the rest of the council and the public, we secured a technical assistance grant to see how we could redo the HEDIC low interest loan, because we weren't seeing the volume anywhere near the volume that was really justifiable to keep this money in waiting. It was gaining interest, but we wanted to be able to deploy it for businesses. So we got those recommendations back in the late fall, in the midst of putting this together when COVID hit. HEDIC has been historically, as you know, well over, I think it's been 20 years, correct me, you know the history better than I do, Counselor, providing assistance to the city in terms of covering salaries. For many years, that was in the form of literally providing like half of the salary. About 3 or 4 years ago, right around the same time when we took over some positions from the Board of Health, we kind of reworked it so that it was being provided as a grant directly to the city, and then the city's just, so it was clear and more transparent what people's salaries were. That has, the mayor has been seeking to reduce that contribution from HEDIC over time, to allow HEDIC to invest its money in its mission instead of just towards recurring salary expenditures. And so we would hope and expect that that continues to go down over time.
I'm asking questions, and it's not because I know answers, but I want to make sure everybody hears it from you, because this year, for some reason, those numbers from HEDIC and some of the numbers from redevelopment are not in our budget in terms of revenue. They don't show. And typically, especially recent years, we've had that highlighted as notes as part of the budget that comes to us. Nothing to do with you. I don't know if it's a change in the auditor's department or a change from the mayor, but it's just not out in the open like it usually is. Historically, HEDIC was formed somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, always paid for the personnel needed to provide administrative assistance to HEDIC itself. It was in the fiscal crisis of around fiscal 91, 92 that HEDIC started paying extra. And so it's really been more than 20 years that we're starting to divert the HEDIC assets back to what they do. And whether it's the revolving loan or even I think we're still got some of the properties that we're helping out the gas and electric from the dam purchase, trying to, what's left of that, to try to get them to sell it. None of what HEDIC does isn't done without an economic development plan, of course, and the city council approves it. But the extra funding, I think you gave the mayor credit. I've been screaming about this for 10 years now to get, some of the money out of the HEDIC budget back into the HEDIC budget. So, I'll let Alex know. He takes credit for everything these days. But my point is, extracurricular.
I should have said the mayor heard you.
Well, he always hears me, believe me. The license board, the board of appeals, a little help with the conservation office, I think, or the conservation commission, I think you said. These are things that are more recent, and I commend the office for doing it. But they can be not time consuming, but you add them up, they become time consuming. And I can see where the positions in your office are well used. But I want to mention one thing that hasn't come up yet this evening, and this is something that is above and beyond the call of duty, and it's your work. And I think a couple other people in your office have helped out with the COVID emergency crisis, with the emergency management of city services during it. And what you've done is remarkable, working with Jeff Chask and Mike Bloomberg and that team, and of course our chiefs of the fire and police departments and so on, and Board of Health. Don't forget Sean. Thank you for that service, because I know it goes beyond what your duties are, and it sure takes you away from your responsibilities. But I commend you for what you did, and sincerely thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. I am not seeing anyone else with questions with regards to the budget. With that, thank you, Marcos, for being here tonight and going over your side of the budget. If you have any updates you want to give us, once again, we'll be taking up the budget vote on the 29th, just to give you a heads up on the date.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Park and Rec. Terry, I see you there.
Thank you, Marcos.
Hey, Terry, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. You're on page 40, I believe it is. No, actually, I got the wrong page. Sorry.
39.
39. Gotta flip the wrong page. Thank you, Counselor.
Yep.
With that, we'll open up to you, Terry, if you have any questions. I know you sent an email to us. We'll get into that in a minute, but we just want to open up and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I did. I sent an email last Friday, basically turning back some money that I know we're not going to use this season. One was the pool. The new pool will not open this year for a variety of reasons. I outlined a few of them. The biggest one, I think, was that I don't think we would have been able to staff it, and it would have been very, very hard to run a pool following all the social distancing. So with that, I'm suggesting a take back, I guess, or reduction in the funding. Todd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you. You're fine.
Okay, I suggested taking back or cutting $45,000 from our seasonal part-time line item, because pretty much all of that money would have been used to staff the pool for 7 to 8 weeks. Some of it would have been used for activity leaders in the park too. Some of it would have been used to augment some of our summer programs, camps. Usually we have a few extra maintenance people. So that was actually kind of an easy one, or an easy suggestion. I also suggested deleting or lowering what we're asking for in the recreation account, because a lot of that money just first would have been spent on supplies for our summer programming. And Senior Fest, I'm assuming won't take place this year. We have one line item for it for $3,500, so that would be an easy one to zero out too.
Okay, with that, any questions for Park and Rec? I see Councilor Murphy, and then Councilor Lisi, I'll get to you.
And welcome, Parks Commissioner Rivera. Izzy, how you doing? So first of all, Terry, thank you for the update on Friday, and the willingness to explain all the other things and make some of the cuts. So a couple of questions. On a temporary seasonal, if I'm reading you correctly, we would end up with 30,000 left, correct?
Correct.
And what would that cover?
Well, this summer I'm hoping to staff 2, possibly 3 small maintenance crews to double check on playgrounds,
Okay.
and even spray pads to make sure they're clean,
Okay.
disinfected, and our signs about all the park regulations are intact.
Okay, that's excellent. And based on what are some of our conversations, that's great.
And I left actually money in, seeing we don't know how the rest of the year will pan out. I don't know if we'll be able to do any special or seasonal events, Christmas, Easter, New Year's.
But that does cover if you did have to, or if you are able to do some of these things, that money's left over to do some of that.
And then I'm hoping to have between $5,000 and $10,000 left just to prepare for next summer in June. Typically we run lifeguard training classes and first aid and CPR. And that actually, if anyone was going to ask, that's usually where our contracted service money goes, just to pay for instructors and supplies. So I'm hoping to have enough left then to get going on the summer season at the pool.
Okay. And down on sports league costs, is that the winter basketball program, or is that?
Yeah, most of sports leagues, most of that, or a good part of that money goes to fund the suburban girls and basketball league still.
Okay.
Some of it actually, if we help out other leagues, Hoyoke football, usually annually, and if some of the leagues need new equipment and they ask and we have it, we give it.
Okay. Right now, we're still not sure about whether those leagues are going to take place in the fall, especially, right?
Correct.
Okay. And two other things. One was the event staging. I mean, I know we used to give for the celebration at Heritage Park. Plus, we used to do the Hispanic Festival. What's the 5,000 left over for?
The 5,000 would be for 2021 Hispanic Family Festival, because they moved it to May.
Okay.
So it would be in this fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay. And then I'm just going to suggest this. And first of all, I appreciate the fact that you're coming and offering to make cuts. Mm-hmm. Just knowing 2 things. Number one, that I would imagine more and more kids are going to probably want to be going, and I'm thinking primarily younger kids are going to be looking to find places where they can go play in playgrounds and things. Mm-hmm. I know some of the equipment is being upgraded. And I certainly, if you were able to say, these are the kind of equipment that we need to upgrade in order to give kids still a nice, safe place to play and in a nice, clean environment, and we use some of that money to put some new play equipment in, I would certainly be in favor of that, so that kids are being encouraged to get out and have somewhat a normal childhood. So thank you again, and thank you for your efforts.
Thanks, Jerry.
Councilor Lisi.
Hi, thanks so much, Terry, for speaking with us this evening. I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. So are you saying for line item number 51240 that we cut 45,000 or that we leave in 45,000?
That you cut 45,000. That's
So
basically
it's a cut.
the money. Yes, we would spend most of that on summer programs and a pool staff.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask was along the same lines of where Councilor Murphy left off in terms of like rerouting some of that money into I don't know. I know that there's like a lot of like online stuff happening and or you know, putting it into the upgrades for the built facilities. Like we may not be able to use it this year, but can we make an investment out of those funds to prepare our playgrounds for a post-COVID sort of world? And I don't know how far, you know, $45,000 can go in terms of you know, playground equipment upgrades. I don't know if you have a sense of where $45,000 could be targeted to make, you know, some sort of like significant changes in the playground infrastructure. But yeah, so I think there's two different ways to look at it. I don't know if there's like partnerships that you could utilize and provide online programming of some sort. I know that we just confirmed a new Parks and Rec commissioner who has a lot of IT experience. So maybe that's something that he can brainstorm about. And if it's not going to be, you know, building connections online through some sort of like, you know, instructional programming. I know that for example, the YMCA in Northampton, so the Hampshire Regional YMCA is offering camp programs that is focused on like drills and skills, so that they're very like individually focused sorts of like skills clinics. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if either the online or, you know, rerouting money towards online opportunities to learn skills or get connected to the Department of Recreation and the services that it provides, or
honestly, at this point, I do not know. But I do know that I've spoken to most of the service organizations in town, the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, and I think everyone is looking towards that for at least this fall and probably in the springtime. So I don't know if we would be the lead on it or a support.
So are you saying there is an interest in collaboration amongst the service organizations to provide online programming?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Most of it is struggling to get through the summer to see what we can and cannot do.
Online programming. And again, I know you probably weren't anticipating you know, having, you know, $45,000 in your budget as wiggle room, but could you off the top of your head like identify like a park where we can make some significant upgrades with $45,000 or less?
$45 doesn't get you very far. Oh, as you know, you were just involved with Ian White a little bit.
That was like 60 or 80 on its own.
Oh, it was more than that when you consider the, you know, the construction and what really costs a lot is the surfacing, the poured in place rubber or the wood chips and just following all the regulations. Off the top of my head, I think instead of a major redo, I think we would be better served to buy newer swings. There's 5 parks in town that have a little tiny play areas like Ingleside and even Jones Point and Blue Tech Park. They were installed over 20 years ago. I think even if we targeted one park at a time, that equipment's all outdated and not up to par. Springdale Park is scheduled for some capital improvements. There is community development block grant money to be spent. I think Terry was kind of referencing that before.
For Springdale Park in particular? Yeah, I wonder if we could leave you a little bit more of a cushion and perhaps take care of some of those, perhaps, you know, low-hanging fruit. What would you guess, you know, swing upgrades would be for Jones Point and then also Ingleside?
Probably Ingleside's in very tough shape. It doesn't have heavy use. So is Glow Tech Park. I actually probably would consider removing it and maybe seeing what neighbors what would be more appropriate now for probably Ingleside and Glowtech.
So the cost of there's a cost to removal.
Mm-hmm. No, that could be in-house, but depending on what we actually want to put there, like I think some of them might just be nice to have a nice seating area. I'm not sure. I would need a little neighborhood input before making decisions.
Sure. Would you, if you were making upgrades though, I'm just trying to get a ballpark figure of, you know, if we were to leave you a little bit more of a cushion in there beyond the 30,000 that you're anticipating needing.
It's just the staffing line item. So I would have to transfer it out, or it actually probably would end up with the DPW. They're usually our project manager for any install, or it goes through their department.
Okay, so then we'll bring that all the way down to 30,000 then, and we'll just.
Well, I'm not saying take it away, but it's always nice to have a cushion. Again, nobody knows what the fall and spring will be, so I thought I left enough of a cushion. Mm-hmm. Maybe I didn't, because we also have a few revolving accounts, Roberts Field and Community Field, and even a general revolving. They're usually self-sustaining for staff. Other than Community Field, Roberts has not had any income, nor has our general. So might be a tight year, it might not.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll take it into consideration. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Mr. President? Mr. President?
Councilor Graney? Sorry about that, I was muted.
That's okay. Thanks for coming in, Terry. Could you just give us a quick update? I know a lot of people in Hoyoke have been used to the Valley Blue Sox at McKenzie Stadium in the summer. Can you give us an update on that?
I don't have much of an update. It's all been canceled. Blue Sox canceled their whole season probably about a month ago. The athletic fields actually are still technically closed. We haven't permitted anybody to play or practice, nothing. That's coming in.
A lot of residents have been asking about that. They weren't aware of that. But,
yep.
Okay, thank you.
We're all waiting for phase 3 of the governor's reopening plan. Sprays and water parks will be open on Saturday, June 28th, and the playgrounds opened about a week ago. And Community Field will be staffed again with part-timers also on June 28th.
Okay, Councilor McGivern was next. I know Mike Bloomberg was looking to maybe answer a question that was going back and forth a minute ago. Would members like to suspend the rules, allow them to speak? I mean, it is it's not really a full meeting, so if you'd like them to speak, look to the rest of the members. All right, so Mike, your hand is up. I didn't know if you were adding to the budget issue.
I did. I just wanted to address that the mayor did purposefully cut 28,000 from the temporary seasonal help, as well as several, about a third of the expense line items from the Parks Department. Mm-hmm. But this, we are not advocating. Well, of course, we're not advocating for further cuts. While we expect this continued disruption of what is available in terms of normal parks and recreation operations, the hope is that we can get creative about the types of recreation activities and expenditures that we can have. The folks who are impacted most by this closure are folks who are used to having basketball hoops and basketball courts and other sort of high touch facilities like jungle gyms that now need to be cleaned much more frequently than they were originally. And so to the numbers being thrown out around now, I would just say that that's, you know, in speaking with the mayor when we did this pass on this budget, those numbers would be concerning to me and to us if we want to be one of those communities that is able to offer those activities to residents. So just something to keep in mind on those cuts, and our office will certainly be reaching out and working with Terry continuously and the Board of Health on the types of activities that we can offer. So I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned.
Oh, Michael, I agree wholeheartedly. The money that I am suggesting get cut 95% of it is just to cover the pool staff, our pool staff, from everybody, maintenance, security, locker rooms, and the lifeguards. We haven't been open in a few years.
Right.
So that's why the cut was made. I think I had originally asked for $103,000, hoping to have an 8-week outdoor pool schedule. But that won't happen this year for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I know the mayor's cut was down to 75,000 with the thought that there would potentially be need. Some towns and cities are having park monitors to help determine safety at certain parks and locations. I know it's something that we've done in the past.
Yep, correct. Actually, instead of monitors this year, I'm hoping to have a few crews, extra crews, part-time people, to revisit parks and playgrounds during the day to keep them clean, to keep the signage, and just to keep things orderly. Typically, we have activity leaders doing activities with kids, but with all the regulations in place, that makes it hard too. The mask wearing and keeping groups under 10. I think for now, that might be a better service to the kids in the parks. Keeping them clean, disinfected, and safe.
Okay, so
I have nothing further to add.
With that, Councilor McGivern was next, then Councilor Tallman. If I missed anyone, I'll get you. So Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Be honest with you, Mike Bloomberg kind of led into or steered us into where I think this conversation has to go. Jerry, I commend you for the work you do. It's incredible, and I understand these are times that are not typical times, and I understand the pool's not going to be open.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, water is right now what we're learning is water is one of the safest areas for the COVID virus itself. It doesn't survive in water. And I think, I understand there's other reasons for the pool not opening,
mm-hmm.
but we're going to have a hot summer, and we're going to need to be able to pay attention to these water parks, these splash pools, and these things that we do have. I'm not sure what the mayor's saying, but I'm hearing mixed messages. But I think you're going to need extra staff to keep these areas safe, to make sure that people are paying attention to whatever the governor allows us to do. One of the things is that, everybody's talking about phase 3 and phase 4, mm-hmm. which if you listen to the governor, if you listen to CDC and everything like that, it's about the vaccine coming out. Mm-hmm. Phase 3 and 4 is a year away. I kid around and I say, you know what, we've only got 15 months left of the COVID virus. We've gotten through our first 3. So it's 3.5, it's 15 months to go before we have some sense of new normalcy. But my question now is, and I agree with Mike, and it sounds like the mayor's saying, is we got to get more creative, because mm-hmm. recreation is going to become important. So 2 questions. Organized youth sports, mm-hmm. are they all canceled?
Right now, I know, right now they are. But I know that the high school planning as much as they can on fall sports. I know Holyoke Soccer is having registration. Right now, people are planning for it for the fall.
Okay, but and your staff is doing what to prepare for the fall?
Right now, getting through summer, it's very hard to prepare for fall. Community field we're prepared for, and Roberts Field I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we'll have any rentals or any sporting events will happen. And again, even seasonal events, I'm not sure about Halloween and Christmas and the things we do during the fall.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to justify the rest of the budget. What are you doing to keep busy with everybody?
We've been very busy trying to be in compliance with the regulations that are in place now. I've done a lot of talking and connecting with all the other agencies out there. And I think we were all waiting for the June 8th announcement from the governor. And I think now we're doing what we can and waiting for the next move forward. And we can center a lot of our energy on maintenance and resources. And Councilor Lisi, if you're listening, for quick, kind of easy updates, I would suggest water sprays. Mayor Morris did allocate money to have the water spray at Pena Park renovated. That would be wonderful. And the other ones like South Chestnut, even Springdale Park, they're just older and they don't work as well. I'd rather put some money into the mechanics of the actual sprays.
Izzy, I like your helper there. I don't know where the helper went, but we gotta welcome. Parks Commission.
Oh.
Is the Parks
Hi, Izzy.
Is the Parks Commission in favor of these cuts?
Myself, I'm not in favor of any cuts, but Terry knows the budget a lot better than we do, so I ride with Terry. But listening to Mike Bloomberg and to suggestions from Terry Murphy and Rebecca Lisi, it does sound very interesting to utilize some of the extra funds to try to make up with certain things where we normally can't, and like we haven't in the past. Like some of the spray parks, like she just said, that need some upgrading, that would be great. Jones Point could use a new park there as well, even though parks are very expensive. And probably, I don't know, Terry mentioned that some of the parks could use a little bit more love. Me, myself, being on the board for the Holyoke Youth Girls Softball Commission as well, I would like to see some of the softball fields get a little bit more love too as well, but it all depends on whether or not it makes sense.
I know there's a lot of questions to be answered, and we're all in a time of not just a crisis, but in a time of unknowns, which makes it very hard to plan any budget. Certainly very hard to plan a budget that's deals with recreation. But has the commission got meetings coming up to talk about ways to get creative for this summer?
We have a meeting tomorrow, so I haven't been able to set a meeting for quite some time now because it was only me on the commission. Now that we have another person, we are able to set a quorum, and we will be meeting tomorrow around 6. And on the agenda, we're planning to see if we can plan ahead with regards to the guidelines that are right now, and to try to move along so that we can adjust if anything changes as it goes. So right now, when fall comes, we are hoping phase 3 will go through, and hopefully we can come out of the meeting tomorrow with an idea of what it's going to look like for us and what we can do to help support the phases that are coming in the future.
Okay. And Mike, if I could, and I know this is another unknown, but most of reimbursement dollars anticipated, state via federal, whichever, seem to be dealing with protecting personnel. Do we have any handle on what money is going to be coming our way in terms of Parks and Rec, even if it's temporary and seasonal help?
It's actually with the Parks and Rec, it seems to be less on the personnel side. We do understand that, and I can talk about today, we just got a relatively lofty quote for hand sanitizing stations for our parks, with a number that is high to the point where we probably wouldn't do it if it wasn't reimbursable, but given the 75% reimbursement on things like sanitization stations, hand washing stations, that those are the types of expenditures that we're hoping to make purchases for. And so certainly there will be some Board of Health assistance with the openings. I know that Terry is on with some email chains with Sean and myself and members of the Board of Health. And as we continue to add some temporary employees to the Board of Health, that'll certainly take off some of the duties and responsibilities of the Parks Department in trying to determine safety of certain activities. But in general, the reimbursable expenditures for things like Parks and Recreation are temporary or possibly permanent facilities to assist with sanitation, hand washing, and keeping things safe to that level. So we're certainly monitoring all those reimbursable expenditures, and that's one of the reasons for not wanting to cut some of this in the sense that a good portion of it should be able to use to cover that matching percentage or the reimbursable amount that we would be eligible for from FEMA or other CARES Act funding.
Like the maintenance of hand washing stations, of those type of equipment and things, for the COVID pandemic itself. Is that something that would be under Terry's budget or something under the DPW?
DPW if they're permanent installs. So if we contract with an outside contractor for temporary maintenance or for temporary hand washing stations and whatnot, then it would be a maintenance contract with the organization which we contract with. But if we were to install anything permanent, the DPW is responsible for the maintenance of our park facilities.
Okay. And can the mayor's office work with the commission and with Terry? Because I just see a big void in the summer. And Terry, I understand you're doing the right thing in terms of a budget. And you're doing the right thing in terms of safety and the public health issue itself. But I just see a big void in recreation coming, between now and September, October, if we don't have some out of the box thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to be able to pay for out of the box thinking when you need personnel to do it. Izzy might have the answer.
Well, not that I have the answer, but I do have a couple ideas for different programs for coming up in the summer that Parks and Recs could possibly run, or we can partner with the Boys and Girls Club or the leagues that are around to help. So like the girls softball league or even the youth baseball league, I'm sure they're only canceled because they can't use the fields. You know what I mean? No. If the fields or like if we were able to use them later on, possibly, maybe they could do a clinic for a day just to get the kids out and do different things. But again, it all has to be within the guidelines. Correct. Just to make sure that we are staying within the guidelines. That's where it's at for me. But tomorrow when we meet, hopefully we can talk more about that stuff and get that going. It's just been hard that it's been hard for the commission to meet in general because it's only been me.
Terry, you had something? I think Terry had something.
Proposals back down.
I do, just so people understand, part of the guidelines for running programs is having a group of 10 or less. A group of 10 or less who can't share equipment, who they can't come and go. You can't have 10 kids one day and then a whole new group the next day. So it's very hard for anybody to plan programming. And that's very difficult to run any kind of a league and expensive. And even like the pool, if we were able to open, we'd still have to follow social distancing. I think we could only have like probably 20 to 25 people in the pool area. And it would be very hard to figure out what to do with the rest of the city who wanted to come to the pool.
Who's going to control social distancing for the spray parks?
There's signs posted right now for
playgrounds. Who's going to control it?
We're not. It's basically, we're going to post all the requirements.
So we're going to open up spray parks and we're not going to have people there to at least watch people about social distancing and making sure things are clean and things are proper. Don't we become responsible for that?
I think we become more responsible if we do try to control the crowds.
Terry, it's public property under your domain, under the commission's domain. We're responsible for it. That's we don't need a lawyer to tell us that.
Absolutely, we always are. But anybody on park property, they use at their own risk. And that's some of the reason that we've all been kicking this around. What should we do? Do we have people working? Do we put part-timers out there? And that's why I feel much more comfortable putting part-timers out in the parks, keeping them clean and safe. Because I don't really think people are going to listen to me or anybody about social distancing and wearing masks and making sure everybody's masked up.
Well, if someone, we got to tell them, because if they don't listen, then we got to shut it down.
Right.
Because safety comes first. And if you got to shut it down, I'm trying to justify your budget. And
I know.
You're against me here, Chair.
I'm not. I'm just being very honest. I've gone through all this myself.
From a budget point of view, I'm trying to be honest, but at the same time, trying to give you ideas of we got to do something more for kids.
Oh,
and you got to do it safely, but it's going to take, it's going to take seasonal help to be there. Maybe the mayor and the commissioners got to get together with Terry and see if we can work this out.
Oh, I fully agree. And I'm not, I'm just telling you the money that we're not spending on staff. And please not saying take money away from Park and Rec. It could always be rerouted. One of the priorities I would like to take on is to build bathrooms at each park that gets heavily used. They're safer for the users. They keep it cleaner. It would have to be staff, but it would help immensely just with overall cleanliness and safetyness. I'm not trying to be obstinate about anything, but I also am concerned about part-time workers in the park. They need to be safe and well-trained too.
Terry, you're doing your job. These are difficult times, and I'm not trying to cut the budget. I'm trying to change the way we do things, but justify the money we spend.
We're going to spend all year trying to figure out what comes next. All of us in the recreation field, because I honestly don't know.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Tallman was next.
Thank you, Terry. Terry, good evening.
Councilor.
I appreciate the work you're doing. Hi, Izzy, and I think it's important that we get another commissioner there, so we have 3 commissioners instead of 2. So as fast as we can do that, and I know you have the meeting tomorrow night.
Yep.
But a lot of my questions are already answered. I think it's looking at what we can do this summer to try to keep people safe, but still give the kids a chance to get out in a safe manner. And I think Councilor McGivern and Councilor Lisi stated that how we the spray park seems like the way to go right now for the summertime. People are just dying to get out, and people are already getting out the last week or 2 just to get out for walks and through the reservoirs and just different parks just to be outside. But on the water issue, and the pool, is it more than just it's not ready? Is it also other reasons why the pool isn't going to be utilized?
What capped it off a few weeks ago, a faulty gas line was discovered. That was very unexpected. It will need to be repaired, and it will, I believe, cost money. I don't think there's money left in the budget. Bob Parent's been working on that end.
Okay.
Time-wise, between getting more money to fix it and having it fixed would have set us back even another week or 2. And the season right now would be short enough even if we open July 1st.
Right. Is there any way of, and I know years ago we utilized the high school pool. Is that a possibility or no?
No, it's not in the regulations. There's no indoor pools, public indoor swimming.
So no indoor at all. Okay. And I just think, with the commission meets, I think the mayors should try to get another commissioner to have the 3. So you can really get together and try to set out a plan for the summer. I think it's important that we follow the guidelines and the safety, right? And I understand my counselors. I mean, I'm glad you offered up some cuts, but I understand, I heard from my colleagues that, maybe we shouldn't cut as much.
You know what, Councilor Lisi, before I forget, what might be very helpful is just installing more picnic tables with umbrellas in parks where there are water sprays. Because I know there are going to be more people there than usual. Maybe if they have a place to sit and relax in small groups, that might be helpful too. Right,
and I think the other thing that Councilor McGivern brought up about trying to have somebody, you said try to get some seasonal help to keep an eye on these spray pools. I think that's important too, because what's the sense in going there if they're not going to follow the rules? And most people don't. There's people now that aren't following the rules.
It's been hard. People are still playing baseball and soccer and football. And
yeah, I see it out there, and it's
the hotter it gets, the harder it will get too.
Yeah, one more thing. What is the date on the parks opening? You said June 28th?
Yeah, Saturday, June 28th. I think it's
okay.
It might be the 27th. That's Saturday. Last Saturday in June.
Okay, and community field, is that open now or no?
Community field is open. All the parks and playgrounds are open, not the playing fields. They're not staffed with part-time people. The part-time people at community field are coming back that Saturday. So the bathrooms will be open and they'll be on site and trying to keep order and clean. They haven't worked since March.
Right. And now at these parks, when especially that one, community field and other parks, you have enough equipment or supplies to keep all the equipment clean?
Yeah, actually the DPW has been great. They've been disinfecting playground equipment once a day all over the city. So they plan on continuing that through the summer. The part-timers would be extra.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Leahy for the first time, and then we'll go back in order for second round. Councilor Leahy? You're on mute still. Councilor, you're still on mute.
Todd, talking to me?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for, I was about to say coming in, but getting on the call. We're talking about the different financials regarding your department, and Joe brought up a couple areas where we could maybe reduce some of the money. What are some of the projects that, some major projects you guys did this past year?
Ian White School was a big one. There's a new playground. We took away the girls softball field and converted the 60-foot diamond at Crozier into a softball diamond, a skin diamond. We will be working on upgrades at Springdale. I'm working with a resident named Laura Ferreter on constructing a top play area at Community Field.
So last year you had about 2 projects done?
The pool, they're still working on it now. That was the big one. Yeah.
Because I was just wondering, because I know, I think Michael McManus is probably, he has a lot of work down there at the DPW. Now, when you're not doing your Parks and Rec, do you think you could be maybe utilized with him as well, maybe helping over in that department?
I think so. I think in some areas, yes.
Is that a conversation that anyone's had with you?
Not just yet. We work hand in hand with the DPW as it is. So I think it would just be an extension, but no, we haven't had a conversation about that yet.
Is Michael still on the call, Bloomberg?
Yes, he is. He's muted. Mike, are you still there?
Can I ask him a question?
There he is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Michael.
How you doing, Counselor?
Good, thanks. Just looking over Terry's budget and whatnot, is there any, because I know Michael McManus has a lot on his plate, and you know, 2 major projects last year. Is there any work that Terry could be doing to help him out?
I mean, I would defer that to Mike. It's certainly a conversation that we can have. I know, as Terry said, there's a lot of partnership between Parks and sorry, I'm getting feedback. There's a lot of
Ryan, can you mute everyone just to get the background up?
Okay. Yes, there's a significant amount of overlap between the Parks Department and Parks and Maintenance. And so some cities have a Parks Department that does its own maintenance, and we have a DPW that does the Parks maintenance. So in terms of the skill set and the needs, you know, the majority of Mike's needs at the moment tend to do with staffing levels for sanitation workers. But where areas where we have had conversation about crossover is in those temporary and seasonal help employee type positions. And so the conversation around whether we have parks monitors and whether those parks monitors can do those types of cleanings and whatnot. That's the area where we're having conversation about where the 2 departments can work more closely.
Okay.
I don't know if you had something else in mind, but
oh, excuse me. I haven't yet, but once we get through the summer or whatever we need to plan for, I was hoping to delve a little bit more into with the Council on Aging, because between maybe their facility and Parks and Rec, we could, I don't know what, but there might be some crossover there for programs for residents.
There could be, but I'm just trying to think. Because you fall underneath the DPW, you're kind of like, what is it, a quasi kind of department? Because so Michael McManus is your supervisor, and so no. I was just, he's not?
No, we're 2 separate departments. There's only 3 full-time park people. Myself, the assistant director, and a head clerk. Everybody else is part-time.
Oh wow.
There is a department under DPW called Parks.
Parks Division.
And so that can obviously that can cause some confusion. So Terry is the head of the Department of Recreation, which we often sometimes call Parks and Recreation. So that can be part of the confusion.
Okay. And so has there been a third person besides Izzy and Jose? Do we have another person that's set up to be on your board?
Not that I'm aware of.
We have had several applicants, and the mayor is making calls.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yep.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Terry.
All right, Councilor Lisi.
Thanks. I just wanted to just offer my own opinions and comments on some of the things that came up here. First of all, I do agree with Terry that while we want to have folks at the spray parks and at the playgrounds wiping things down as frequently as possible, I don't think that they need to be the mask police or the social distancing police, because I just don't think that they have any ability to enforce the rules. And so I would even encourage, if the signs aren't already made, that when you post the rules for the proper way to engage in the park space or the spray park, that you also put some sort of disclaimer in there, like you're participating at your own risk, like we're following the rules and the regulations to provide this space, but your engagement in the space is at your own risk, which means you need to follow the recommended guidelines on your own. I agree with Terry there that the park staff should not be the mask or social distancing police. They have no enforcement power, and I just don't think that's just not what they need to be there for. It's really the cleaning and disinfecting. I do want to, however, also chime in about the picnic tables. I think given social distancing, I don't think we want people like reusing the spaces. So to have people like sitting and lingering in groups around a picnic table isn't really working to like maintain space. If you come with your own family, I think, you could put down a blanket and picnic on a blanket, and that blanket should be, I think the recommended guideline at this point in time is 10 or 12 feet away from another group of people. Definitely still groups no more than 10 at this point in time. But yeah, I wouldn't want to create more space for people to hang around on things that will get dirty and contaminated. I'd rather see that money invested into real equipment that children can grow on, because a lot of their like social emotional development, as well as like gross motor skills, is directly connected to their ability to play on playground equipment and in parks and things like that. So I would definitely favor the financial investment going towards playground equipment as opposed to picnic tables. And then finally, with the team sports, I think that there's ways that the team sports can, again, at a minimum, do clinics, because the guidelines don't want you sharing equipment. But if everybody, was given, personal equipment, or was charged with buying their own equipment and maintaining it for the season, I don't think that's a problem. So I do think I'm fairly optimistic about the ability to get on the fields and have people do outdoors activities in responsible ways. And I just think we need to make sure that people understand the guidelines, because I don't think that they're overly prohibitive for different activities. Yes, we do have to change the way we do things normally, but I don't think that they create broad prohibitions. And I think it's about understanding them and figuring out the workaround. So just chiming in there. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, I've talked to Terry already, because I have done clinics and baseball clinics in the past, and I've run a league, and obviously the league is looking like that's not going to happen. But the potential of doing clinics and potentially offering things, the concerns, and Terry and I talked about it today as well, is that some of the concerns are, if you have to have your own equipment. Let's say I'm doing a baseball clinic, that means everybody has to have their own bat. And bats are not cheap. And then and Terry said this, and I don't know if she was being a little facetious, but in effect that I could throw a baseball at one kid, but I couldn't throw that baseball to the next kid.
You'd have to swap it out. I don't think they all need to come with their own stuff, but you'd have to swap it out, have it disinfected for the next batter. No, I wasn't being facetious. You can do drills, but in the regulation, you can't have pickup games or certainly organized games. So for a baseball clinic, you would only be able to do drills, which is okay.
Which means I could basically do other than playing a game, because when I do a clinic, that's all we are doing are drills.
Yeah,
And you know, we could have pitching, we could have catching, hitting, fielding, whatever.
Yeah.
But the issue of the equipment and all that kind of thing, because if you ended up, and I think I could end up with, let's say I had an assistant coach. Let's say Izzy decided that one of my former players tried to come up and help. So if me and Izzy were running it, we could only have 8 players. So we could do drills with those 8 players and try to make sure they're keeping spacing while Izzy and I wear masks.
Yes.
So there are things we can do, and I certainly think the youth baseball league could potentially do something. Youth softball could do that. I can't imagine, based on what I'm hearing, that anybody would be allowed to do a basketball clinic with more than one person.
No, there's no basketball. Well, right now there's no contact sports even allowed in the regulations, and that's basketball, baseball, softball, football. Yeah. So technically, the playing fields are still closed, as are the basketball courts.
Right.
Tennis courts were allowed to open.
So again, I do think there are potentials of doing that kind of thing during the rest of the summer to try to provide some opportunities for kids to do things. And then the other thing you said, Terry, and so if you ran a clinic, and let's say you did 5 kids a day, I think I heard you say that the next day I couldn't have 5 different kids.
If you want to do a week of clinic, I think you're supposed to have the 10 kids all in the same group. I guess you could have different kids, different days. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Clinics I think of as 4 to 5 days, a summer program.
Yes. I would be looking at, if I were looking at doing it, which I am thinking about it, but if I were doing it, I would be looking at trying to get, all right, some kids on Monday, some kids on Wednesday, some kids on Friday. So we're getting more kids involved.
And as a city.
And then, they can come again the next week, but would be in the or different kids could come. So you're providing different opportunities for as many kids as possible.
Yep. And it's still very difficult because as a city person, I don't know how you would determine who qualifies and who doesn't.
Well, obviously you'd have to have some kind of registration.
Yeah. First come, first serve, and make people come out. I mean, it's all the things that we're all going to have to figure out.
Yep.
And the regulations, everything can change in the next 2 weeks. So it's all very airy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Izzy, you had something? You're on mute. Just let you know you're on mute right now. There you go.
One question. So, because my stepdaughter I just signed her up for a field hockey summer league. And it starts in July, and they're going to be playing contact sports. So the question to me is like, if everyone else is going to be playing, or certain sports are going to be playing, and I'm not saying that we have to play, like allow them to play actual games, but like where it's at with like Terry was saying with the groups, we could have 3 different coaches coaching 3 different groups at Springdale Field, and have different, you know what I mean, all spread out all over the field. You can do different things within that, and that's what I meant by doing like clinics and all the other stuff within the guidelines. I just want to know when like the parks, like the fields would be open in general, like, because I'm kind of confused if I just paid for my stepdaughter to sign for a summer league right now that starts in July, and they're going to be playing full on games until September. So like,
is it in this state?
Yeah. They start in July.
I don't know. I don't know that will happen. We are, and I'm not working alone. I work with Sean at the Board of Health and the Law Department and the DPW. We are following the regulations as best we can.
Sure. Joe, you have your hand up, or?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor McGivern.
Just a follow-up. On picnic tables, before we go purchasing them, wood tables are going out the door because you can't clean them. You can't disinfect them. And if we're going to be doing table, I mean, that's not in this budget. Would be in the DPW portion of the budget. But that, I think, Terry, I'm not sure anymore these days. But those things got to be taken into consideration. My thoughts about temporary help is you're going to need the bodies to clean things, whether it's tables. And I did not say that we need Rebecca. I did not say that we need social distancing police. What I'm picturing is without leagues, without organized sports, without things that we normally offer, kids are going to look for things to do. And they're going to end up at the spray park. Okay. We're going to have, and I did say crowd control, so I apologize. What I'm saying is we're going to have to monitor the amount of people in a park at the same time, or tell them to spread out. And then that's what I'm thinking. Not, and then I know it's not enforcement's an issue, but I think we have to be able to, and if we aren't going to have the hand sanitizer, stations, we're going to have something, for the playground equipment itself that needs to be cleaned and so on. I don't have all the answers, and I know it's impossible to have all the answers because you can read the guidelines right now, wait an hour, they're going to change. But I think we have to anticipate. We got 3 days of 90-degree heat coming this week. We're going to have a hot summer, and I think we got to be ready and prepared to do things different and to offer things that we can to try to keep the kids busy. Anyways, that's all. But thank you, Terry. I know you work hard, and I think the budget isn't, it's already been reduced. I think we need to keep some money there and try to figure out ways how to offer recreation this summer that are safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Councilor
Mr.
Lisi,
President?
hold on, Councilor Lisi, do you have your hands up or no? Okay, so Councilor Granny.
Yeah, just quickly, just an idea. We got that beautiful facility, Roberts Field. There's a beautiful track there. We could always run track clinics for the kids, which is an individual sport. They could run in different lanes. If we had somebody that could facilitate that, that type of activity, that would be one idea that we could use.
Terry, did you hear that?
Yep, I did.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Park and Rec? Hearing none, thank you, Terry. I will stand up and say thank you, Terry, very much. I mean, she's coming, as we always ask department heads to ask for cuts and stuff. I understand all the arguments. So Terry, thank you for offering up cuts. I think we have some time before June 29th in order to iron out final recommendations that you may or may not have on this. But I appreciate everything that you're doing, and we'll wait for those updates. Once again, 29th will be the ultimate budget hearing.
Thanks, Terry and Izzy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Next on the list is the Senior Center. Neve is here. We'll open up to you for updates or any information, and then go to the budget. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Thanks for inviting me. I guess I just want to make sure that folks understand that while the Senior Center is closed to the public, the Council on Aging is not closed and has not been closed this whole time. All of our staff stepped up with remarkable flexibility when all of this started happening. We went through a couple of phases, initially trying to support essential services and doing our meals program. We did have to stop that, but in the time that the building was actually closed and we were all working from home, we were calling approximately 700 of our seniors to do wellness check-ins and continuing our social services as best we could during that time, addressing any kind of essential needs that anyone had. As of June 1st, we are back open with, not to the public, but we have staff coming in. Our meals program to go is happening again. And our numbers of meals per day are between 80 and 100. So people are responding well to that. Almost every one of our activities that we had going at the Senior Center, we quickly moved to virtual programming using Zoom. So to date, we have 8 fitness classes happening. We have 3 additional ones that we'll be adding before the end of this month. We have a senior sing group that's meeting by Zoom. We have 2 support groups. So we've really worked hard to move things virtual, which the next thing to address in regards to that is making sure that we are addressing accessibility. So I've written a grant for CDBG-CV funds to try to distribute some Chromebooks to seniors who do not have access. We will be partnering with West Mass Elder Care. They have been talking with Comcast to work out an arrangement to make internet access affordable for seniors. In addition, we've been taking care of food security issues with our brown bag distribution. There have been a couple of food distributions directly from the USDA in conjunction with West Mass Elder Care. And we are also, as of June 1st, transporting anyone who needs to non-sick medical appointments. We have a plan in place to look to doing small group activities if things continue to move in a positive direction, starting mid to late August. But we won't be seeing likely our congregate meals happening again before, and some of our larger group activities happening before probably October, based on the recommendations from the CDC and the state Executive Office of Elder Affairs, et cetera. That's my update.
Oh, thank you very much. With that, are there any questions at this time? I see Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, Levi, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's just I mean, last year in your budget for the health service provider 51202, you had $89,000 that was budgeted. And obviously, I think you had only spent about $45,000 as of the middle of April. Is that a reduction in number of? And now you got your budgeted for 71,000. Is that a reduction in number?
Yeah, let me give you a little background there.
Okay.
We had 2 full-time nurses who were working, which is why we had the, I lost my number, 89,000.
Yep.
When those 2 nurses retired, I decided to hire 1 full-time nurse and 1 half-time wellness instructor because I thought that that would be sufficient going forward. So there was a reduction. Now, the reason why only 47 was expended was because the part-time wellness instructor was not hired until after the start of this budget cycle.
Okay. And does that wellness instructor do fitness and things?
The wellness instructor teaches our osteo and arthritis classes. It's 2 classes every morning, Monday through Thursday.
Okay. And the other aspect, and you already started to answer it, but the energy and gas in the 52100, I know it's budgeted for 40,000. Last year you budgeted for 45, and obviously with what's going to go on in the early part of summer, I'm assuming we're going to have some deduction in that because we aren't going to have all the people going to the senior center at that time. But you did say, I think I heard you say that you expect in August that there's going to be some small group type things that you're going to be able to do.
Yes, that's my hope based on what we're seeing. It will be things like writing groups and support groups.
Did she freeze?
It froze up.
Yeah.
Up. Ryan, anything you can do there? Or?
Because I think things.
Oh, there she goes.
Okay.
Sorry.
You froze up there. You froze up.
Froze up.
On a hot day, you froze up.
Okay. And about where did I freeze up?
Well, you were saying I think you were talking writing, and then I didn't quite get the next one.
Okay. So I was saying I think that I'm a little worried about the energy line because I do think that if things continue in a positive direction, we will be opening up the building to small groups happening in bigger spaces so that we can accommodate social distancing. So I don't know how much energy savings we will have. We've done our best at this point. We're not using the second floor at all for anything. I have to keep the staff relatively comfortable, but everything has been adjusted for the upstairs spaces because we're not using it at all. So there is an attention to those savings, but I'm not sure that it matches what the cut is.
Okay. And let me this, you may not know this, but this is just, do you have a concept as to how many, or an idea as how many of the seniors that used to go to the senior center do not have access to air conditioning?
Do not have, I don't know the exact number, but that was the other CDBG CV grant that I submitted was for 75 window air conditioning units. my understanding is that it has been moved through the process. It is moving forward to wherever it is at this point.
It's coming to us tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, because that was a great concern, that if we aren't open for people to come in and find a cool space, that's a real health concern.
Yeah, and again, I know you also had something in there for Chromebooks for seniors. So I guess from a health standpoint, I was thinking that, that the air conditioners, especially if we have a hot summer, and Councilman McGivern's already forecast that, that we would be that the air conditioners to me were more of an immediate health concern, especially when they're not being able to get out like they used to be able to get out. And I am a senior, so I guess I can say it like we can't get out like we used to get out. And I know do you know how many Chromebooks you were talking about?
I requested 75.
So 75 of both? Okay.
To maybe answer where you're going with this, I think that access to technology is critical. Obviously, air conditioning, you would have to argue, is more critical, but mental health and social isolation, it's huge right now. And I think we should seize an opportunity here to create greater access for members of the community. I know going forward, one of the things we've talked about is that even once we can allow people back in to the senior center, our intention is to continue to also simultaneously offer the programming virtually. It gives people an option and creates hopefully higher numbers and greater connections with the senior center. But we don't have any intention of removing that virtual component, even once we can have people back in, because I also think that people will self-select. Some people will come back right away and some won't, and we don't want to lose connection with those folks.
Okay. And again, the 75 number that you came up with in both cases, I'm assuming that's just a random number, or?
It's not completely random. It's what I thought could get funded. And, I guess my hope is we start with kind of a pilot around this and see where it goes. I think that there is opportunity for additional funding through other collaborative partnerships with West Mass Elder Care if this initial 75 is well received.
And if we were in a position to transfer some money from other areas that are not as immediately in a health standpoint to get more air conditioners or more Chromebooks, you feel like the potential could be there?
It's hard to know for sure because we haven't done a program like this.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions.
Sure. Mr. President.
Councilor Graney?
Yes, IRAs, we miss you guys tremendously as a constant visitor to the senior center, and appreciate all that you do for us down there. You guys do a heck of a job. But some of us who use the physical education or the gymnasium down there, are you going to make some adjustments on that when we open to probably separate some of the machinery and so forth, like the bicycles and things like that? Because I know a lot of the seniors, that's really a crucial part of their day to keep active like that, and it's a wonderful facility.
Thank you. We are looking to have the fitness room. That would be part of the mid-August plan. We'll be working with the YMCA around the layout of the room. Because technically they are the ones who oversee that room. And we will likely be doing some sort of timed participation. So you would sign up for a time slot and that would be yours. And we would limit the number of people who could be in that room at any given time. But we know people are very interested in trying to get back in there and use it. And we'd like to keep people safe. So we will be putting a lot of thought into how that works.
And just one other thing about the cafeteria, like the small cafeteria, a lot of people really enjoy using that facility too. Will you have to do some social distancing things there?
Yes, actually, initially we would, again, this would be August, we would reopen the cafe for selling things like coffee and soup and whatnot, but we would likely remove the seating from the cafe at that time, because it would be impossible to create a safe seating arrangement there. So we would instead encourage people to take their coffee and go perhaps to the multi-purpose room, and it would be a sacrifice, because I know that folks love the cafe, but I'm open to suggestions, but I haven't come up with anything that would create a safe space there.
Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
Yes, thanks so much for being on the call with us today, Neve. I was actually surprised to hear you say that you think you'll be opening to small group activities in August, but I trust that you know the space and the regs that you need to meet in order to do that. Do you think that you would, I mean, if you think you could be in at least the big space for small group programming, do you think that there's any opportunity to do some sort of coordination with the War Memorial? Because I know that there's not a lot of activity happening there, at least, you know, regular activity. And they have a very large space. It would be air conditioned. It would help, you know, seniors get out of the heat if they needed to get into a space. And then, as you also mentioned, the mental health component of being able to socialize and have relationships with people outside of the home is a big factor to take into consideration. So, yeah, if you're going to be using your own large space for small group activities where distancing can be maintained, has there been any thought to other spaces or even outdoor spaces?
Yes, I've been talking with Kate Preisler right there at the Wistariahurst about potential activities in the lovely gardens there, outdoor spaces being far safer than indoor spaces. I had not thought of the War Memorial. I think that's a great idea, and we can certainly look into that. And I also just want to say this loud and clear, that the possibility of a mid to late August opening is a best guess and is completely not set in stone at this point. There's a lot that can happen between now and then. And I don't think that the guidance has been perfectly clear coming from the state level, especially in regards to senior centers. If you look through the 4-phase guidelines, there's nothing that's specifically addressing that audience in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're going to have to be doing your sort of best guess of how to keep people safe given the different venues that you might use and the different activities you may be using in those venues.
Right, because in our space, we are a restaurant, a fitness center, classroom space. We're, you know, all of those things. Mm-hmm. So I'm speaking a lot to other directors in the community, other senior center directors, and there's a lot of talk about what best practices will be going forward. And the best guidance, I think, is to take it slowly and do things a little bit at a time.
Great. I'm glad to hear that you're making connections, you know, with peers in your industry, and then also across other city venues that, you know, are underutilized generally, and it's an opportunity to make use of them and keep people safe at the same time.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Tallman?
Yes, good evening today.
Hi, Peter.
How you doing? Thanks for the work you do down there. You touched on a little bit about the luncheon program. You've started that up again? Have you been doing that right along?
We're doing a grab and go.
Okay.
So it's the lunches. I mean, we always had a to-go lunch option. So we've been doing the grab and go since June 1st. There was a period of time where we were not doing it. We really wanted to encourage people to stay home. We worked diligently with West Mass Elder Care to get people who needed it signed up for the Meals on Wheels program. But yeah, there was a period of time where we were not doing meal service from the senior center, but we feel like it is safe to resume that, and people have responded in great numbers.
Oh, that's great to hear. So now, how does that work? They'll call up and then they'll come down and pick it up, or do you have somebody delivering them, or the meals?
It's curbside pickup.
Okay.
So we ask folks to order by 2 o'clock the day before, and then we have a couple of folks who, as they drive up, we get it to their car and they stay safe.
Okay. And I love the ideas about the Chromebooks, and I know you probably heard about the veterans, the soldiers' home. There were a bunch donated there. I think it was Health New England or one big hospital that donated a bunch of Chromebooks for there. And I think that's vital. I think the connection, the social connections that people need are very important today. Do your staff, is everybody pretty much at work now, or some people still remotely working, or?
Everybody is coming in for, except for the drivers, everyone is coming in for three shifts a week, and then they're working from home the other 2.
Right.
Again, we're continuing with the wellness check-ins, so that's something that people can do when they're on a work from home day. Our social worker, she's actually taking phone appointments and doing meetings if she's working from home. The drivers, to start, because we're only doing medical appointments, they are coming in 2 days a week.
Okay, so now and that way people that, just like before, they would call to get a ride or whatever.
Yes.
Pick them up for the appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you so much, and continue the good work.
Thank you.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, Neve. Thanks for coming into the meeting. And I just wanted to comment that I'm really encouraged to to understand your goal about getting the small groups together. I think the social isolation is taking a much greater toll on the elders than is commonly recognized. And I think the remote and social technology that we're using is great as the best thing that we can do, but there really is no substitute in our social interactions with for being with other people. And so I hope that moves forward. And the only other point I'd like to make is that we have seen the administration be responsive if there is an arena that's been a little bit set aside or not directly addressed. If the folks in the industry gather together and put their position forth to the administration. So to the extent that that might be needed, I would encourage you to do that. I just think there's so many moving targets that sometimes things fall through a crack that might not be intended. But thank you for that, and the outreach and the wellness checks. I mean, it's just, I work with the elders and I'm just seeing the stress that they're under. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nave, welcome, and thank you for the presentation. It was very informing. I have no question that you keep everybody busy in these times. And I think Councilor Bacon pointed out, I mean, the population you're working with is very difficult, being that, and you got to protect the Howie Graney's and the Mike Sullivans of the city council. Peter and Linda Bacon, but I wouldn't say her age to anybody, right, Linda? Peter and I are just edging into that. We're not quite there yet. We're not, right, Peter? We're almost there with you, but not quite. But what I really liked was the answer to my question about the drivers. You keep them busy with medical appointments, which makes sense, and you got to get them in, get them out, and then in and out. Like they work 2 days a week, 3 days a week.
Right this minute, it's 2 days a week. It could change as soon as next week. They're on call to be coming in as soon as we have the need. So, and the numbers are going up every day.
In this day and age, that's the way it should be going, and it makes sense. And I really like your idea about Wistariahurst, about outdoor events, because I think that's the answer for our age group. We need to get together. Linda's exactly right. We need things to do. And you can only do so many book clubs online. You got to get out there, and you got to get the chairs distanced away from each other, but be able to see everybody and talk. And elders know how to entertain themselves, but getting people together is a big part of it. Thank you for what you do. And I think your budget, you did an excellent explanation of thinking out of the box and how to use your budget. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilor Graney.
I just feel the need to comment on Councilor McGivern's point and let him know that I've started counting backwards. I'm no longer counting forwards. I'm getting younger, not getting older. And thank you, Narve, for the work that you do. It's wonderful. The seniors just love the place. And we're looking forward to getting back in business.
We're looking forward to seeing everybody again.
Mike, did you have an issue or comment?
Yeah, just 2 quick points because there's been some discussion about the laptops and the air conditioners, and I just want to assure everybody that to both of those requests, the mayor has suggested full funding of CDBG funding for Chromebooks and air conditioners. And then second is just more general that I want to commend Neve. She's been one of the most, if not the most, active department heads throughout the COVID crisis, recognizing that her population of the population that the Council on Aging serves is by far the most at-risk population. And then what she's done with her staffing and her programming, probably every other week, or if not maybe every week, we're having an ongoing back and forth with Neve about how the medical outlook is changing and how she is adapting her staffing needs. And so that is one of the reasons why there are some small cuts to the senior center, but ultimately the mayor's position is that this is the most vulnerable population to this ongoing pandemic, and we have full confidence that Neve and her staff will continue to work around it and do their best to serve that community.
Thank you. I have one other quick anecdote, really. You know, many people like to think that seniors won't use technology, that the idea of doing virtual fitness classes, virtual anything is, you know, you just won't get the same participation. And just so everybody here knows, some of our fitness classes being conducted virtually actually have more regular attendees than when we were conducting them in person. So I just want to leave you with that. It's been very successful, which is why we will continue to do it. And I just want to say how great our seniors are. They also have been flexible during this, and they can't wait to get back. And we are going to do everything we can to make that happen as quickly as possible.
Howie, did you hear that?
I heard it, Joe, and I'm working on getting my beautiful face on television, but it just hasn't happened yet, but I'm working on it. As soon as Best Buy opens up, I may go up and get a laptop, and I'll surprise you all.
All right, well, there's no other questions.
Of course, I haven't had a haircut or a shave in about 3 months, so I look more like a teenage werewolf. I look more like a teenage werewolf than a senior citizen.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here tonight. If there's any other updates, you can always send it to us. Once again, the budget will take place on the 29th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Neve.
The museum, Wistariahurst couldn't make it tonight, from what Ryan told me, but the IT people are here, Ryan. Is that what you said, to talk about that?
Yes, so
excuse me, Councilor McGee.
Yeah, Councilor Graney.
I have to check out. Okay, sorry, but I have to.
No problem.
Okay,
we thank you.
All right.
All right, Ryan. Ryan Allen. You're still on mute.
Well, so, Counselor, if I can, so the IT budget is under the mayor's office. I'll be speaking to that, and with us we have Kevin Russell from Wally Computers, who they are a managed service provider for a large portion of our IT services. So Kevin is also available. But the IT budget is put together by myself and the mayor in conjunction with, partially in conjunction with Kevin and his team, but also partially just internally at City Hall.
All right, now so you have that on page 10 of the, all right, so from there, I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Yep. So if you all have checked what I thought might be best today, was I sent out an itemized expectation of IT expenditures for fiscal 21, largely based off of our fiscal 20 expenditures. The The mayor did ask me if there was any place to cut within the IT budget. So you'll see that I brought down the total request from about 715 to approximately 638. One of the good things about IT in terms of expenditures is many of these are software contracts and are predictable ahead of time. And so there shouldn't be too much variation in terms of the budget. So you can actually do a decent job of itemizing the expenditures. So I would just refer everybody to that email, but I'm happy to walk through it. One of the things I did want to point out that shows a difference between last year and this year was last year was the elimination of the police and fire network administration line. As you know, the HG&E was previously overseeing a certain amount of our IT expenditures, and the city had an internal consultant as well. We now work with Wally Managed Service Providers and the mayor's office in supporting that relationship. What we did here is that the base contract price is within the computer consulting services line, along with, I believe, 2 days a week of on-site services. And the police and fire network administration, that line item is the portion of funds to cover an additional 4 days of on-site service support, primarily at HPD and HFD. So there's a total of 6 days per week of on-site service support from Wally Computers, in addition to the 24/7 remote monitoring. We did increase from 5 days of support to 6 days of support, and that's almost entirely to have essentially a full-time IT person within the police department. Police departments around the country have been most susceptible to cyber attacks. They also are the most targeted for cyber attacks for their infrastructure. They also have a unique infrastructure that is different. So Kevin can talk about many of their clients that they manage use similar types of hardware and software infrastructure, but police departments, of course, have their own unique systems. And when something does go wrong, it needs to be fixed immediately. And so that is why the mayor supported an additional day of on-site services, which brings the Wally service contract from approximately 353 to about 300, well, I can't do the math in front of me, but 383, sorry, from 353 to 383 for those days of services. I've broken down in the email I sent you all of our planned software license and usage fees. This has been an area where Wally Computers has been incredibly helpful in eliminating some redundant or non-supported or unneeded software licenses and things like that from the past. It's been hugely helpful there, and you all are aware that the city has since rolled out a brand new website, and the city clerk is in the process of rolling out a brand new meeting minutes, meeting notes, agenda setting, legislation tracking, all-encompassing tool that's going to make it a lot easier to send that information to and from council and also to the public. And then lastly, the system's hardware and software maintenance. So this is by and large for routine hardware upgrades. We're trying to upgrade our systems about every 4 years. We have many backlog systems within the city, computers, workstations that haven't been updated in many years, and some that are running software that's no longer supported. We are upgrading probably 40 machines this year. They'll be rolling out in the next few weeks. And as we go into fiscal 21, we're looking to budget for an additional 35. As I mentioned at a previous meeting, one thing the city is doing is we're moving away from desktop computers and instead towards laptops that utilize docking stations. So computers can be utilized both in the office, but also securely from home if needed, or from a different office within City Hall. So those are the high level functions of the IT department for fiscal 21. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I know Kevin is happy to answer any questions related to Wally Computer Services. And he has some documentation that we will get out to you as well.
All right, with that, Linda, is your hand up, or is that from the prior, or you're on mute? Linda, you're on mute still. Okay.
But I do have a question within this budget. Also, if I can be first in the queue.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I see the added service, so I understand the increase in the cost, but is there any way through any efficiencies or any upgrades throughout our systems that we're going to be able to reap any savings by becoming more efficient or effective?
Yeah, so I think Kevin and I can both take that one. I'd say that part of the reason there's a small reduction in actually the police department's internal IT budget, hardware and software systems budget, and that's partially used to offset this. And part of the reason for this internal person is instead of having a police officer who is managing IT systems, that we have professional IT individuals who are able to do that. So that's part of the reason and one of the areas for efficiency changes. I'm going to let Kevin speak to some of the things that they've done over the past year, really to streamline our services. It's been really incredible, the types of tools we've been able to, the contracts we've been able to end and sever, as well as some of the consolidation of hardware and things like that. So I'll pass that over to Kevin.
So
Absolutely, thanks.
Thank you, but would there be a way that we could see that on a spreadsheet? You know, what we're saving by changing over certain things compared to what we were spending, so we can sort of see a return on investment comparison, if you would?
Sure, yeah, I can work with Kevin on some of the software consolidations and hardware consolidations. I'd say one of the challenges is much of our IT is it's to keep functions running, not necessarily to we're not at the level, and you know, it is a long-term goal in terms of digital transformation where we're really able to either reduce staffing levels or really increase capacity for services. It's one area where we are there, and you can see in the next fiscal year's budget has been the transition to e-permitting software and e-permitting tools that are being rolled out by the Board of Health and the Building Department, which will help save time and money for permit reviews, both internally but also for residents in terms of cutting down the times. But yeah, I'm happy to work on some of those numbers of some of the tools and softwares we've been able to get rid of and save some funds over the past year. Kevin,
the reason I'm asking is because, you know, we're looking at a budget with a deficit of a little over $1 million. And yes, we need to invest in technology and infrastructure and things of that sort, but we've got to be able to bring it to bear to affect our overall operation, because we still have this big deficit that we're looking at. So I'll appreciate any information we can get on that. Thank you.
So I'd say in the reduced budget, with the exception of expansion of on-site services, there is very little. I don't think there's really anything here that is meant beyond ongoing city services. Mm-hmm. Right. If we look at some of the lines, and I'm happy to show it in the. You know, we cannot get rid of Microsoft Office or our email licenses or the cloud storage, which is required for backing up our data and tools that we have as a city. So that is the budget that was put together, and the reason for the itemized receipts. I think I had a grand total of $4,700 that is not directly allocated to something at this moment. And that would be to cover any unforeseen hardware or software needs.
Linda, I think Kevin might have something for you. He was raising his hand. So Kevin.
Thank you. Just to add to what Mike had said, and to back on what Mike said, I'd be happy to put a spreadsheet together and some numbers of cost savings. But as Mike had said, licensing, even though we can't get rid of Microsoft licensing, we can show how we were able to reduce licensing costs from previous years by looking at the number of users you had versus the number of licenses that were being purchased, and equal those out, as opposed to previous years having a overabundance of those types of licensing that you were paying for upfront over in a year, but never actually utilizing. So as well as support costs and licensing costs and warranty costs that were no longer needed by Wally being in charge and working with the city for their support services. So.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mike. And Kevin, welcome. How was your first year with the city?
It's going very well. It's a great learning experience, and learning that you guys are a great group of people to work with.
Well, you kind of led right into the question I wanted to ask. Mike, great job on the budget part, and I understand that. With the reduction in the police department, what you do with them and the daily, it was almost daily, on site, assistance, I guess you would call it. But is that going to work with them, the reduction?
Mike, is it okay that I answer that?
I'm asking you, Kevin, and then Mike doesn't have a choice on this, because we can always cut the mayor if we want. That's what you rather hear. It's an easy question. It's not a hard one.
Absolutely. So yes, the services are working with the chief. We've had conversations with Chief Febo about escalation and the need for that more of an on-site presence for technical support. And the goal, and I think what he's looking to achieve, is he had 2 police officers that are assigned to IT services. By Wally assigning a full-time person there the 5 days a week, that he is going to be able to take one of those officers off of being an IT service and allow that person to resume his full duties as a police officer, essentially putting another police officer in service for the city.
Those are the things we like to hear. And I was sold on Wally computers even before your first year because of what the police department said about your services with them, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a two-way street. I'm not looking for specific departments or names, but are our departments cooperating with you? Is your relationship with the department heads going smooth? Is there some that still have to be worked out?
No, everything is going very well. We're having great results. I'm working very closely with Lori in purchasing, the other folks in DPW as well as veteran services. It's very coming along nicely. It's, again, a great group of people all around to work with. So we found that people are coming to us and embracing the services of the entire, all of the Wally services, both when it comes to day-to-day support, as well as the change and stuff that Mike, in policy that Mike and I have kind of put in place for how support is requested, how hardware and services and things like that are being taken. That's another savings that Mike and I are currently working on is a revamp of printers and consumables, so toners and those kind of things for printing. And we're looking for, to put together something that's going to save the city a great sum of money over a year, over previous years. So, and that's something I'm working with, amongst many departments. And a lot of that is consolidation. Currently there's a lot of people throughout the city have multiple printers in their departments, which is a huge cost when it comes to consumables and maintenance. All of the people and all the department heads that I've worked with as I've gone from department to department to review all of the printers and those kind of things in each department have really been looking forward and being forward thinking when it comes to what do you really need 3 printers in this desk? Do all of these people need a printer on their desk? Can we go to one device? And yes, maybe somebody has to get up and walk halfway across their office, but it's going to save money. And give more functionality. And all of the department heads have been, very easy to work with on those kind of things. So, in what potentially could be, a troubling situation. You tell somebody you're going to take their printer away from them, and they have to get up and walk. That can be a touchy situation to handle, where they're like, "No, you're not taking my printer." But everybody's really stepped up and been, you know what, that seems to work.
I mean, that's okay. And that's the areas we have to work on this day and age of COVID. I think we're slowly getting used to what we're doing online is becoming more of a normalcy than it is of just, a fun way to do a city council meeting is Zoom, right?
Exactly.
I guess we're getting used to it. But one of the things I do know is with more and more people, becoming dependent upon laptops in terms of this type of work and working from home, is laptops starting to replace our PCs, in different departments?
Absolutely. Mr. Bloomberg and I were working on replacing a lot of machines that were outdated and no longer under support by the manufacturer nor Microsoft for outdated operating systems. We were working on purchase of some new machines right as all this started breaking out. And it was the discussion and the thought and say, now is the time to make that jump and move to more mobile devices for those to get those in the hands of people. So if and when this happens again, it's a lot more strategic than it is running around and borrowing machines, which is the case of some of the things that we're doing right now. So, and I will note on doing council meetings from Zoom, I will say my office chair is a lot more comfortable than those benches in the council chambers.
My better half just brought me a coffee. I like being here on Zoom, and he's going to kill me if I keep telling everybody that. But
I'm going to give it about 5 minutes before my son comes in and waves to everybody. So
we love it. It's good. It's good entertainment. I think it's the future. I think we have to invest in it. I think we have to be prepared to invest in it because there's still a lot of unknowns in everybody's world. But the IT world is changing. Not so much the hardware and what we do, but the whole way we do it is changing. And I think it's important to have you on board. And I think the budget is less than we did 2 years ago. So I think we're staying within our budget and it makes sense. Mike, I don't know who to give all the credit to the website for, but it's wonderful to work with it. I love the way we can grab our minutes online. We can check videos online. It's just incredible how, at finger touch, we can get stuff off the website. But
Andres
really
spearheaded that.
I think this is all connected, and I'm looking forward to working with Wally in the future. And thank you for everything you guys do to bring this all together.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, just one question, and thank both of you. And that's on education and training. So, I mean, we get new things in, and I know last year I met with some department heads, and they were talking about Munis and needing to get more training on that. So, and I know there's no money in the budget for that. So, do department heads or employees get some kind of regular opportunities to enhance their abilities with the hardware and software that they have?
So I can say it from two fronts. On one end, there's a portion of funds within the personnel department, and those have gone to things like cybersecurity training, which have been citywide. But when it comes to new software and new hardware, the way it tends to work is that with the specific contract, so we have a contract with Tyler Technologies for Munis, there's a certain amount of training hours baked into that. With the new website and our contract for the establishment of the new website, there's a certain number of hours that they offer for training for that. So we've been making sure that when we're purchasing software and hardware, that the onboarding process is a key piece to that.
So is that like you would bring in several department heads or employees all like in a couple hours, you're going to get a review of this and a review of that?
So the new website is a perfect example, right? We had the core team that was set up on the website, primarily Andres, do a one-on-one training. And then at a later date, we scheduled a date with department heads or key folks, and they got on a video conference. Well, this was because, of course, this was during coronavirus.
So that's
got
built
on a
into
video
your
conference and do it to us. Yeah.
That's built into your contract rather than having special education training.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Someone's got something going on in their background. If you could mute. Any other questions for Kevin? Councilor Bacon.
I just have one more question, and it's out of ignorance because I don't know what we're doing with payroll in this city right now. And so I'll start at the basics. Are we off of paper yet for payroll?
Payroll is primarily processed through Munis and Tyler Technologies. We still have several folks who receive paper checks. I'm not sure.
But do we have our payroll tracking and our time tracking and our accountability through our IT system at this point, or are we still all on paper through the department heads?
To the best of my knowledge, those two things are split. And so the payroll tracking and how much people are getting paid is tracked through Munis, but our tracking is not done digitally at the moment. So employees aren't putting their vacation time in digital.
Right. So are you saying that every employee coming into the city is still turning in a paper timesheet for time off, paid time, and all that instead of using technology?
I will say that at this time, yes, if someone is taking time off, then they are submitting a time off sheet to their department head.
So in the strongest terms possible, I would encourage us, because 10 years ago, we were trying to use Munis to automate our payroll and have accountability in our time tracking systems. I would just strongly advocate for that, where the rest of the world is long ago gone there. And I just think it has a lot more accountability, because in a system like ours, one of the biggest ways money is lost is through the challenges of tracking time. So I think it's of critical importance.
I would concur, and Kevin knows this, and had the conversations with Kate Chakowski, who is our primary Munis liaison, as well as Hector from the personnel department, as those softwares tend to really touch multiple different departments. But one of the goals this year, which was started pre-COVID, we had 2 meetings with some vendors, and then coronavirus happened, is to see if we can reduce our Munis line budget, reduce some of the packages that we're utilizing Munis for, and use that to bring on some payroll tracking. So I concur wholeheartedly with you, Councilor Bacon, and that's really something I hope we're able to do this year.
Thank
and
you.
I hope we can do it within our budget.
Thank you.
All right, is there anything else for the IT side? Seeing no other hands or hearing anything, Kevin, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
We
Thank you,
appreciate it. From here, we'll go on to the last one on the list, which is Board of Health. That would be page 34. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
As with everyone else, we're opening up to if you have anything to add or any updates on the budget, and then from there we'll go to questions.
No, nothing really in particular to add, other than some standard increases in salary. The expenses are largely the same. You'll actually see that the expenses items are lower this year than they were last year by a few $1,000s. Some of these line items aren't as depleted as they might normally be because there has been, excuse me, a reduction in some of the services rendered and services that have been asked for due to the COVID-19. Otherwise, nothing to add.
All right, so we'll open up to questions. I see a hand from Councilor Bacon. Turn it over to you. Oh, from Pryor?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Board of Health? Councilor McGivern? Were you raising your hand or no?
I am now.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was trying to get to the mute and the boo hand at the same time, Todd.
I
Thank
saw
you.
you move. I didn't know if it was for the coffee or for.
The coffee's gone. One more sip. Sean, thank you. And I get the budget, and I get the times are difficult, and I know your job has been incredibly difficult in these times, and I thank you again for what you do. Last time we were together, we talked a little bit about contact tracing. Is that responsibility? It falls under the Board of Health, but is that causing any increases that cannot be handled from monies coming from the federal government in your budget?
Not at this time. Any additional monies that we have needed to expend up until now and for the next, I would say, short while, have been covered by money that was distributed via MEMA through the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and that has covered a lot of the costs. The state, I won't say it's without its flaws, but the state has rolled out the Contact Tracing Collaborative, which is a state-run contact tracing program. And so local boards of health really can have as little to do with that as they like, from zero involvement to just sort of steering the ship to totally running it themselves. That's not really viable in Holyoke, considering the number of cases and sort of some of the diversity of our residents, but I don't anticipate it adding undue costs. The state has sort of seen what that would mean for a lot of health departments and addressed it with the collaborative.
Thank you. And can you just tell us, is contact tracing working in Holyoke? Is it active?
The Contact Tracing Collaborative, what I will say, the very positive aspect about them is they're not just calling and asking the last 6 people you saw or the last 10 people you saw. The Contact Tracing Collaborative that's run by the state offers translating services, a dozen languages, to make sure that everybody is able to communicate in the language they're most comfortable in. And then they also provide a variety of services to people who have to either isolate, or people who are having financial troubles, getting you in contact with programs that provide groceries, or delivering medications, or offering services to people who are having difficulty with housing instability. So I would say that the collaborative is very, very active. And while they're still working out the kinks of unrolling a statewide program that services hundreds of communities, I would say that it is effective and it is out there. It's just that the rollout they didn't have a lot of time to test it. So there have been some bumps in, I would say, consistency with some of the results, but it's very much there. And we are in touch with the local staff, obviously remotely, that are managing it on a weekly basis, sort of touch base and try to iron out any wrinkles that we encounter.
John, the animal control services, is the bulk of that for the TJ O'Connor services?
It is, yeah. It's a round number, 175 that's budgeted, but the expense, I do not believe, is a round number, which is why I think there's still $1,500 in a line item, but that is paid for, and it is entirely for TJO.
Okay. Well, last year we had a lot of discussion about this. Last couple of years, do you have some, or can they provide us with some updated statistics as to what they've been doing in Holyoke? I know what their services are, but what the numbers are.
Yeah, I'll ask them tomorrow. They'd be more than willing to provide an update, and I think as they've proven in the past, they're aware that people are curious about what it is they do. They're not always the most visible service, but I'll reach out to them tomorrow and get you guys a paper update. And if you'd like, I'm sure they'd be willing to come in again and well, not really come in, but they'd make an appearance on Zoom to address the council if that's preferable.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Todd.
Councilor Tallman, and then Councilor Murphy, and then Councilor Bacon.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. Just a couple of brief things. On the first page in the overtime line, object code 51300, you asked for 7,000 and 10,000 was proposed by the mayor. Is that an error?
I don't believe it is an error. I think that's to address the possibility that we are going to have to be working overtime when things continue to open up. I have to be really honest. I don't like to gripe, but the state has very clumsily rolled out the reopening strategy that they have in place, and they have dumped a substantial amount of responsibility on boards of health without really accounting for the network or the relationships that boards of health have with their communities. So now suddenly we're responsible for getting involved with gyms, with eyebrow threading studios, with manufacturing, with businesses that we have no previous history of enforcement or relationship with. And suddenly we're going to be the primary enforcement authority in the region to make sure that they not only handle what would normally be considered labor issues, but then also, you know, the public safety side of having people reporting back to work. So I believe that was to supplement a possibility of a lot of additional work. And the same thing, it was discussed earlier, you know, parks, if there are issues there with the rollout or crowding, or, you know, we know now that the pool is not going to open, but there was a possibility that would have. I just think there's going to be a lot of extra legwork that the Board of Health is going to be doing after hours to deal with unforeseen circumstances.
Okay. And how many actually employees do you have in your department right now? Total employees?
10.
You have 10. Okay. And do you still have the nurse?
Sure do. Debbie has played a vital and irreplaceable role in the last few months, and I'm very, very grateful that she is there.
Well, okay. I like to see it there now. And now we haven't had a code inspector in a while?
So the code inspector line item that you see on here, 51110, was never actually funded through the Board of Health. That was a CDBG funded position that was funded out of community development. Sort of his role was a Board of Health role. So that space is here, but the expenditure never came out of our office.
Okay. And on the page 35, let's see, the education and training, 53190.
Yes.
Is that amount increased, and why?
So you mentioned the code inspector. So the code inspector that was there, his name was Carlos Cruz, and he was hired full-time to Sanitarian 1 to fill a vacated position there. There's 2 Sanitarian 1s in the office, as you'll see. And he was hired on, and his responsibilities expand substantially. The code inspector has a very narrow range as it's a grant funded position, but he's coming on board. And then we've hired 2 new inspectors, Sanitarian 2s. They replaced myself and Lynn Denise. I became director, Lynn became assistant director. And then we have another open position. John Weir-Suzuki retired after 38 years of faithful service. And so that position is open. And in the current market for public health, hiring an inspector who has all of their training and certifications is just not realistic. So we have a lot of new, well-educated inspectors, but their certs and trainings are going to have to be paid for sort of all in a bunch, where under normal circumstances, we'd only be filling 1 or 2 positions, but there's been a huge turnover in the Board of Health in the last 18 months.
Okay, thank you. And one more question on advertising, 53430. You didn't ask it for anything last year, but you asked for 500 this year?
Yeah, advertising is for, in our office, if we change or update regulations, we're required by law to post those in the newspaper. So I don't have changes in regulations currently pending, but just sort of a placeholder. There was no money budgeted last year when we ran into an issue where we needed some advertising, and then it created a little bit of a difficulty. So the ask is there in case we do have to publish regs.
And just lastly, how is everything going overall in your department with all the, say, enforcement? Are you getting calls from people? Are the people that are not following the rules, the guidelines? I mean, all throughout the city, is it being difficult, or people pretty much following the guidelines of the CDC?
I don't think anybody is intentionally trying to be difficult. Again, I think that there's a large communication gap between the governor's mandates and the orders and the general public. If you're a business owner, people don't even know where to look because the state has not really done an efficient job of advertising where you go for your specific guidance. So if you're a hairdresser, if you're a barber, if you own a pretzel stand, unless they're told or they spend the time searching around, there hasn't been a lot of transparency for go to mass.gov, go to this page, here's where everything you need to know is. It's sort of, the governor gives a 2-hour address, the news plays 15 minutes of it, a reporter sums it up, and then they switch to other news. And so people don't really have a good connection. So I would say that largely people who are not abiding, people aren't trying to be difficult. I think for a lot of people, they're just not, there haven't been really a lot of avenues created to put people in touch with the information they need. So they learn it from neighbors, from friends, from Facebook, from, oh, I heard it from so-and-so. But there's also I would say, a population that exists throughout the country of people who don't really believe in the seriousness of this. And they're always going to be there. Enforcement wise, we have really stressed education and information over enforcement. I really don't think that issuing fines to businesses that are already struggling financially is the solution. That creates a lot of resentment. So we've done our best: verbal warnings, written warnings, phone calls, emails, in-person discussion when necessary, but it's gone as well as it could have. I mean, this is a crazy thing. So
crazy time. I can recall being at City Hall when the mayor had his talk and had the fire and the chief, and you were there, and the school chief and the nurse that evening, and you've been handling things well ever since, and I really appreciate the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes, thank you. How you doing, Sean?
Good.
A couple of things. First, let me just go. I know, and I've been talking about this. I just want to, do you know if we've ever gotten to the point where the AEDs that we have in City Hall and I think in almost all of our buildings, they're still not functioning?
They're not installed.
Not installed. Okay. And obviously you got other things going on right now, but
I just want to say, Terry Murphy, I'm not trying to throw anything under the bus, but anybody under the bus, those are not in our possession. Their installation is not something that we are able to do anything about. They're not in our office. We are not going to be the parties installing them.
Okay.
We don't make the decision about where they go. The nurse, Debbie Shire, has made several inquests about getting them installed. She feels that is, if they're here, they're not doing anybody any good in a box. Yeah. And she feels it's very serious that they go up, but so far our voices are not being heard.
And my voice is, she actually is the one that brought it up to me at a Board of Health meeting and said, please try to get this going. And I believe that was in October.
Yeah.
And I've talked to both the personnel office and the fire chief and trying to put things together. And hopefully we will get it so that, I know we got other crises right now, but there's an opportunity right there to do something preventative and deal with it beforehand. And so hopefully we'll get that done soon. A couple other things. Floating principal clerk, do you share that with that person with another office, or is that just what it's called?
Well, initially it was shared with the building department years ago when that position was created, but the workload has increased substantially in both departments, and so Sue is the floating principal clerk. In the building department, if a staff member, either Chris, the head clerk there, or Marie, who's a part-time clerk, if they are out, Sue will fill in.
Okay.
And Sue also has some very specific roles that she shares as the floating principal clerk, but for the most part, she is a dedicated Board of Health staffer, and she's sort of a, bench. To use a sporting term, she's like a bench for the building department. If they have, someone can't come in, or there's a sickness or an extended vacation, she would be able to fill in. She keeps up to date on their functions and their software. So she is ready to answer if necessary.
Okay, thank you. The auto allowance 51850.
Yep.
Is that an auto allowance for everybody that goes out and does things, or is that just for you? Because you got a pretty fancy car if it's all that.
No, it's not for, it's not only for me. I do receive it as an inspector. All inspectors receive that as opposed to, say, an insurance policy or something using city vehicles. So all of my inspectors, animal control, the assistant director, myself, both sanitarian twos, the sanitarian one, and the soon to be newly hired sanitarian one, and any of the COVID inspectors, they're all going to be using their own vehicle. And so there's actually a provision in city ordinance that says that inspectors are entitled to a vehicle allowance to account for wear and tear on their vehicles, repairs, additional fuel expenses. So we don't submit mileage on a monthly basis. We just, every other week, we're given an auto allowance.
Is it a specific amount?
$235.
Excuse me?
$235
each month or each
month.
Okay.
And that's not just for the Board of Health, that's inspectors citywide.
Okay. And then down on the expenses on 53020, the teen pregnancy prevention services.
Yes.
Do you know right now what this, I mean, Holyoke at one time had one of the highest teen pregnancy rates. Do you know where we've gone with that in the last couple of years?
I can talk to Cindy Miller over at Hashpack, and I can get you an update on that. That line item was set up to sort of act as a funding source for Hashpack, and they operate independently, and this is one of their funding sources to do, you know, talking about sexual health, talking about domestic, you know, violence, talking about teen pregnancy and contraception and getting people access to birth control, and, you know, a variety of other sexual health services. But I can reach out to them and get you some numbers.
Yeah, because as of April, we had only spent $750 something out of the 4,000.
That has that's gone down. I just talked to my clerk today about that number because I was curious if COVID had interfered with their services, but she says that there has been some submissions for additional expenses out of that line item. We expect it to be used.
Okay. Yeah, and if you can have them give us a report, that would be great.
Absolutely.
On the communicable disease, which is going up from 1,500 to 6,500, 53101.
Yep.
Is that related to this virus or?
Well, communicable disease services, the line item is sort of defined as reimbursement for additional nurse coverage for flu clinics and emergencies. In this case, the state has been great about providing additional funding. I don't know when that ends, and I don't know what things are going to look like in the future, but flu season is coming, and I think it's going to be a particularly nasty one considering that flu symptoms overlap with COVID symptoms. And we are really going to try our best to get out and push for additional viability and visibility for flu clinics, you know, among city staff, among the community, among, you know, some of the at-risk communities, among the homeless population. And so that's, again, we're just trying to be prepared. It just seems like a crazy thing. I mean, there's no way to predict this, and the state has, as I said, been very good about offering funding, but they're starting to cut it back. I mean, NEMA is already telling cities and towns, we're done giving you PPE, find your own sources. We're done doing this. They shut down the testing center at the Big E. They're already rolling. We're only in phase 2 of the governor's plan, but they're already rolling back a lot of the accommodations that they've made for first responders and essential workers. That's already being passed on to cities and towns. This is your responsibility now, is what they're telling us. So, you know, I hope I don't have to use it, but.
Okay, no, hey, I just want you to be prepared. That's fine. And then vacant buildings, board and secure. And you know, this is one of those issues that I'm always talking about. So I know you had 0 last year, 5,000 this year, but 2 years ago it was almost 9,000.
Yeah.
So is this because you've got buildings that you know you need to do right now? And if you do them, how quickly? I assume they immediately go on the problem property group.
I would say that this is, again, the reason we got 0 last year is because of the revolving fund, and it was sort of said that this is a duplicate line and that we already have a revolving fund. And again, the reason we're asking for the 5,000 is if there is a large building that needs to come down, or there are a couple of large buildings, it's always nice to have a little bit of cushion. If we deplete the vacant building fund, there's $135,000 in there right now, 135,306.21. But we do have sort of a lengthy list of buildings that we'd like to get down, and this is just sort of a cushion in case expenses arise or there's a property that has to be taken care of in a lien period for the revolving fund, or if those expenses are committed. We have discussed several buildings that we'd like to take down, and so again, this is just sort of a contingency.
Okay. Let me just end with this will be my last question. And I appreciate you've been your first year and a half, you've had some major challenges, but I do appreciate what you've done. And just, has anyone, because I know the council has voted twice now to ask the mayor to work with the problem building committees, potentially creating a bond to, and I believe there were about 11 or 12 buildings that the committee had recommended being demolished.
Yep.
I know the Boys and Girls Club has asked for the one on Nick Cosmos Way and Cabot Street to be removed while you're getting
115,
a brand new playground and all fixed up, and right next to it you got a building falling down.
We don't own that one, and that's what the challenge there is. That's not a city property.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I understand.
But again, we still need to move on them. You can't just leave them sit there and fall down, because eventually we're going to end up picking it up. So do you know, has there been conversations with the mayor's office about potentially giving you additional funds to be able to do and clear things in a relatively quick manner, rather than to go 2 or 3 buildings a year, and by the time we get through those 2 or 3, we've got 2 or 3 more or more than that?
There was discussion around the time of your last order, and when we put the list together, I was one of the contributing parties to that list, and there was some discussion at the problem property group, and then that's the last that I've had any discussions about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Thank you very much.
Councilor Vacant.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, Sean. Thanks for all your good answers to the variety of questions. I'm interested to know, and I know you have to look into the crystal ball for this answer, but since the state has been providing offset funds for the extra activities that you've had to do, and you've increased 3 or 4 or 5 different lines in here, do you have any sense of what proportion of this budget you might get some reimbursement for under the COVID?
Well, there's 75% reimbursable expenses for many things under FEMA. And I would say that many of the things that we have expended they haven't come out of our budget directly. And so some of the line items that I've suggested bumping up in sort of a preparedness based off of the craziness of this last year. I mean, so, we had the Tripoli, Zika, West Nile virus, mosquito scare the year before, and that hasn't gone away. It's just in the off season. And then the COVID coming around, and there's just, it depends on the expenses, but many expenses as they relate to COVID will be refundable up to 75% until the money runs out. And that's kind of where the caveat is I don't know when the money is going to run out and when we'll encounter those costs.
So for somebody like me, who's a conservative budgeter, if you could give us a guesstimate, and we understand that you're not going to know exactly what it would be, but to the extent that, say, the overtime, the supplies, these various lines that you've increased significantly, are going to be reimbursed by COVID. I just think it would be important for me to understand. Because, for example, like in overtime, if I'm not feeling confident that the state is going to be reimbursing you because you and others are having to go around and follow up with all the businesses, I will tend to go very conservative with it and say we'd like to see what's going on before we double or triple the overtime. Do you see? But if I'm confident that there's enough of a pool to get us through August and September and July, which will be, in my view, the most intense months of this, particularly as we see the encouraging statistics that have come out late with more testing and a lower percentage of positives. You know, it seems like the intensity might be the most in the next 3 months. So if you're able to shed some light on for us in that regard, it would just, I would find it helpful. Just
well, I would say that, so for the overtime, you know, I asked for 7,000, the mayor has proposed 10. I would say that I am confident that any COVID related expenses would be reimbursed while funds exist, and that in fact any overtime expenses that have been encountered citywide, not just in my office, we have been asked to mark that down on the overtime sheets for submission so that the city can be refunded. So it's not just overtime out of Board of Health. Any department that encounters a need for overtime based off of COVID, we've already been instructed that that is reimbursable and that we should be identifying those specific hours of overtime that are used so they can be applied for reimbursement. Same thing with the communicable disease services. If we're paying for certain additional expenses like information or for nurse coverage, so far that has all been approved as a reimbursable use as surge public health staffing. And so that's been made clear to me that that will be reimbursed. And in some cases they've allowed deficit spending. In others you have to apply to deficit spend. They'll approve the application for that, and then you can deficit spend. But most of these uses on here, if they are for COVID and the funds continue to exist, they will be eligible for reimbursement. Okay. I'm hoping not to have to, I will realistically say, you know, acknowledging that there is a need to trim some of these. I'm really hoping that we don't need all of this. I guess I just would be remiss to not sort of try to build in a little bit of protection in case there is a resurgence or there is some other twist to this already complicated issue with COVID, or, you know, a secondary case or outbreak or mutation with flu season.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that. And can you either validate or clarify for me where we as a community stand relative to the intensity and the infection rate and the death rate being 62 to 63% in the nursing center facilities? Are we tracking consistent with the state, or are we higher or lower in terms of that statistic?
Well, I'd say we're artificially higher, and there's two reasons. I would say one, the Soldiers Home is sort of what brought very unfortunate, but it's become sort of a case study.
Well, right, but they certainly didn't end up being alone.
No, they did not, and I don't mean to represent that in any way.
Right.
Just before a lot of the protections and additional oversight was put in place by the state, it sort of struck hardest at the Soldiers Home. And then I would say that the city of Holyoke has, I would say, a disproportionately high number of those long-term care facilities. We have like a dozen facilities, which is not typical of many other communities that have the same sort of population layout.
Exactly.
And I would say our trends tend to be a little higher numerically than other communities with the same population numbers. But we do have someone from the Harvard Medical School who has been sort of observing, as I would say, like an embedded reporter, but the idea is that he is gathering as much data as he is able to from Maven and from some of our other sources. And he's working with some of his advisors at Harvard, and they're going to try to put together a really comprehensive look at Holyoke and sort of break down the statistics of how this affected the community. So we are doing our best to gather information and work with some accredited people at no extra cost to the city.
Yeah, and I know that there's been a lot of good progress in that arena throughout the community in the last couple of months. But I was thinking that from the terms of what you need to do within the community and with the tracking, that is the key focus probably, right?
Well, for nursing homes, the tracking is a little
Soldiers
less.
home, but the
nursing homes are a little less nuanced because the tracking, the community tracing is really about people who are mobile, and the population of nursing homes largely are static. They're in the home. Their only source of visitation is typically family or the staff. And the unfortunate reality of the situation is that the staff are bringing it in.
Correct. Correct.
So,
they've been locked down now for months. So what I'm trying to get at is that our community tracing piece, while it is there, is a smaller proportion of the work that we'll need to continue to do than it might be in another community.
yes, because we have a higher proportion of nursing homes. And I would also say that the community tracing has not created any additional costs budget-wise.
All right, I wasn't clear on that and how
so the CTC is paid for entirely by the state. That independent tracing collaborative is paid for by the state. And then the staffing that we have been using to sort of build up our own in-house community tracing has been our own inspectors who have been able to do a lot of that when they're not in the office, as the city was primary work from home for a while. And then also the Holyoke Public School nurses, we've had a sort of a core team of 5 or 6 nurses that have come in on a regular basis, and they've been doing that as well. And so that's sort of an extension of their duties already. And so they're helping with that, but it's not creating any new personnel costs.
Okay, because I work somewhat connected to the center, but not in it. I was curious about how that whole contact tracing thing would work with the employees, who really often were the source.
Well, we call them. I mean, it really comes down to we're dealing with them.
So you're doing that part. Yeah.
We are, and we have tried to keep the long-term care facility employees away from the community tracing collaborative because we'd like to exert a little additional level of monitoring and guidance. So we like to handle those in-house, and then above and beyond the sort of responsibilities of the community tracing collaborative, Debbie and myself and our inspectors have set up relationships with each of the long-term care facilities that have had a cluster, and we're calling the administration. We're monitoring increases. We're discussing complaints in person with administrators, with the the doctor that's we're really trying to give a personal touch, and unfortunately, in many cases, that has not been able to reduce effects as much as we would like. But I do believe that it has helped substantially because it's ourselves, and then we loop the Department of Public Health in. So we're calling them once or twice a week, and it's myself, Debbie, the public health nurse, an epidemiologist, an administrator from the Department of Public Health, and then several members of the administration at the long-term care facilities, Daybrook Village, Care One, Montmarie, Mount St. Vincent. We've really tried to put together a comprehensive support network for all of those facilities.
Oh, well, thank you for going into that level of explanation. I appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Counselor Tallman, you still have your hand up, or you have another question? Okay, all set. I see no other questions. Sean, thank you very much for everything tonight.
Thanks, Sean.
There's some stuff that people requested. Please get that when you can. And the 29th will be when we do the budget. So with that in hand, that was our last department. We thank everyone. I know Tanya's been online from moment one. So Tanya, thank you again for being there for us. And With that, I'll say good night to everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.